The sky died at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Leo was watching cat videos when it happened. He'd been slumped in his gaming chair for 3 hours, the blue light of his monitor washing over a room that smelled of stale pizza and despair. On screen, a tabby kitten batted at a dangling string while Leo scrolled through his streaming dashboard for the 100th time that day. Viewers, 2, one was probably a bot. The other was his mom, who'd texted 30 minutes ago saying she was just checking in. Failed streamer was too generous a title, Leo thought bitterly. He was a ghost in the algorithm, a 24-year-old with decent equipment and zero charisma who'd been trying to make it for 2 years. His channel, Leo's Lair, featured gameplay commentary so bland he sometimes put himself to sleep. The only thing he'd gained from streaming was carpal tunnel and a profound understanding of his own mediocrity. He was about to shut down when the light changed. Not dimmed, changed. The afternoon sun streaming through his apartment window didn't fade to twilight, it simply vanished, replaced by an absolute, starless void that swallowed the sky whole. One moment, Los Angeles was baking under a September sun, the next, the world outside his window was a flat black canvas, empty and silent. No clouds, no sun, no hint of blue. Just, nothing. Leo froze, his hand hovering over the mouse. What the hell? He stood up so fast his chair rolled back and hit the wall. His heart hammered against his ribs as he crossed the 12 feet to his window. The void wasn't dark like night, it was an absence, a negation of light that made his eyes ache. He could still see the buildings across the street, the parked cars, the palm trees, but they were lit by some sourceless, directionless glow, as if reality itself had become a poorly rendered video game. Then the whispering started. It began as a vibration in his teeth, a subaudible hum that made his fillings ache. Within seconds, it resolved into voices, dozens, hundreds, overlapping in languages he couldn't recognize, syllables that twisted in his ears like serpents. They weren't coming from outside, they were inside his head, a psychic intrusion that made him clutch his temples. Stop, he gasped, stumbling back from the window. A notification flashed across his vision, not on his monitor but projected directly onto his retinas in glowing, alien glyphs that somehow translated themselves. Cosmic Broadcast System initialized. Interfacing with host, Leo Martinez. Scanning for compatible patrons. Leo's breath hitched. This wasn't a hallucination. The text hovered in the air, crisp and undeniable. He could feel it, a cold, impersonal presence settling into his mind like a new operating system. Patron found, the whispering fractal. Subscribe. Y/N, ***. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single, multi-layered voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It spoke without words, pouring concepts directly into his consciousness, infinite recursion, non-Euclidean geometry, the taste of forgotten colors. Leo's mind recoiled. This was wrong, this was violation. But under the terror, a tiny, desperate part of him whispered back, what if this is your chance? He'd spent 2 years begging for attention from faceless viewers. Now something was offering power. Real power. With trembling hands, he reached out, not physically, but with his will, and selected Y. The world exploded. Pain lanced through his skull, white-hot and crystalline. The whispers became a scream, a fractal shriek that unfolded in endless dimensions. Visions flooded him, cities built from impossible angles, creatures of light and shadow dancing in spaces between seconds, the slow unraveling of causality. His senses overloaded, he could smell time, taste gravity, feel the weight of silent stars watching. And then, the power. It arrived as a cool trickle in his veins, a foreign energy that settled in his fingertips. The empty soda can on his desk trembled, then lifted an inch into the air, rotating slowly. Telekinesis. Minor, barely enough to lift a few ounces, but real. Leo stared, his pain momentarily forgotten. He willed the can to move left, and it drifted obediently. Ability unlocked, minor telekinesis, tier 0. Source, the whispering fractal. Warning, psychic bleed-through detected. The warning came too late. The visions returned, stronger now. The whispering fractal wasn't just granting power, it was leaking into him, its alien consciousness brushing against his own. Leo felt his thoughts unraveling, his sense of self fraying at the edges. Memories distorted, his childhood birthday party now featured guests with too many eyes, his first kiss tasted like static and screaming. Reality itself seemed to warp, the walls of his apartment breathed, pulsing with faint, geometric patterns that hurt to look at. No, 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 he choked out, falling to his knees. He could feel the madness waiting, a yawning abyss that wanted to swallow him whole. This was the cost, he realized with dawning horror. The power came with poison. The whispering fractal was an eldritch entity, an unfathomable being whose mere attention was corrosive to human minds. But as the psychic storm raged, something unexpected happened. The madness bounced. It wasn't that Leo resisted it, he didn't have to. The visions washed over him, the whispers echoed in his skull, but they couldn't take root. His consciousness remained stubbornly, inexplicably intact. The fractal patterns on the walls resolved back into ordinary drywall. The taste of static faded from his mouth. The screaming in his mind dwindled to a distant buzz. He was still on his knees, sweating and shaking, but he was sane. "How?" he whispered to the empty room. A crash from next door answered him. Leo scrambled to his feet, his new telekinesis forgotten. He yanked open his apartment door and stepped into the hallway. Mrs. Gable's door across the hall was ajar. Old Mrs. Gable, who baked him cookies every Christmas and complained about his loud video games. "Mrs. Gable," he called, pushing the door open. The scene inside would haunt him forever. The elderly woman was crouched in the center of her living room, but she was no longer Mrs. Gable. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated to black pools, and she was clawing at her own face with frantic, jerky motions. Blood streaked her cheeks. She was babbling, a stream of gibberish interspersed with fragments of that same fractal whispering Leo had heard. The angles, they don't add up, the sky is hungry, it's so hungry." She turned to look at him, and Leo saw nothing human in her gaze. Just raw, gibbering terror and a mind shattered beyond repair. "Mrs. Gable," he said, his voice trembling. "It's me, Leo." She screamed, a sound of pure, unadulterated madness, and lunged at him. Leo stumbled back, slamming the door shut just as she hit it from the other side. The wood shuddered under her frenzied pounding. He backed away, his heart thundering. She was gone. Consumed by whatever the whispering fractal had done to her. But he was fine. Shaken, terrified, but sane. Why? He retreated to his apartment, locking the door behind him. The void still hung outside his window, silent and oppressive. Distantly, he could hear other screams, crashes, the sounds of a city coming apart at the seams. The cosmic broadcast system had interfaced with everyone, he realized. And most people weren't surviving the process. His computer monitor flickered. He'd never shut down his streaming software. In his panic, he'd left it running, and now, it was broadcasting. The feed showed his empty chair, his messy desk, and the window with that impossible void beyond. The camera had caught his frantic movement, his collapse, his recovery. And now, as he stared at the screen, he saw the viewer count. It was climbing. 10 viewers. 50, 100. 500. Comments began to flood the chat, moving too fast to read at first. Then he caught fragments. User 743 *, what is happening, the sky is gone. Survivor Jane *, my husband just started screaming, he's tearing at the walls. Comseeker *, I can hear the whispers, make them stop, make them stop. And then, cutting through the panic. Echolost *, your voice. When you spoke just now. The whispers faded. Leo blinked. He looked at his microphone, a cheap USB model he'd bought on sale. It was live. He'd been muttering to himself this whole time, and it had been going out over the stream. He leaned closer to the screen, his mind racing. The comments continued. Mind clear *, it's true. I was starting to see things, but when I focused on your voice, it cleared. Sanity anchor *, please keep talking. It's the only thing holding me together. Desperate viewer *, my kids are screaming. I don't know what to do. Just keep streaming. Leo's throat went dry. He looked from the chat to the void outside, to the blood under his fingernails from where he'd clutched his head. Mrs. Gable's mad scream still echoed through the wall. He was immune. Somehow, he was immune to the madness. And his voice, his calm, boring, utterly ordinary voice, was acting as a lifeline for people drowning in psychic chaos. He swallowed hard, then reached for his microphone. His hands were steady. Okay, he said, his voice low and measured. Okay, everyone. I'm here. My name is Leo. I'm in Los Angeles. The sky is gone. But we're still here. Just breathe with me. He kept talking, narrating the ordinary, the dust motes in the beam of his desk lamp, the hum of his computer fan, the texture of his mousepad. Mundane, boring details, and with every word, the chat exploded with gratitude. Viewer count, 1,000. 2,000, 5000, ***. People were clinging to his stream like a raft in a hurricane. His failed channel, his pathetic dream, it had become the only thing standing between thousands of people and the abyss. And as he spoke, a new notification flickered at the edge of his vision, glowing with soft, ominous light. Eldritch patrons watching, 12. Human viewers, 743. Donations pending. Leo took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the rising numbers. The apocalypse was here. And somehow, impossibly, he was at the center of it. He kept talking. The stream was still running. Leo stared at the monitor, his hands trembling slightly as they hovered over the keyboard. The viewer count had stabilized at 3,742, most of them human names with desperate comments scrolling in the chat window. But there were others. Names that hurt to look at: whispering_fractal, crawling_chaos_1337, eyes_that_c_all. Eldritch subscribers. Your voice is keeping me sane, one comment read, timestamp just seconds ago. Please don't stop talking, begged another. Leo took a deep breath, the scent of stale coffee and fear thick in his apartment. Outside his window, the sky remained that impossible void, no stars, no clouds, just an emptiness that seemed to swallow light. He could hear distant screams, but they were fading now, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the hum of his computer. Okay, he whispered to himself, then cleared his throat and leaned toward the microphone. Okay, everyone. I'm still here. Leo's stream is still streaming. His voice sounded calmer than he felt. That was the trick, wasn't it? Years of failed gaming streams had taught him how to project confidence even when his hands were shaking. But this wasn't about entertaining gamers. This was about, what? Survival? Salvation? A new notification flashed in the corner of his screen, different from the usual stream alerts. It glowed with a sickly green light that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Whispering_fractal has donated, 50 bits. Message, more entertainment. Show us your power. Leo flinched. The telekinesis he'd gained from accepting the Whispering Fractal subscription earlier still tingled in his fingertips, a strange, buzzing sensation like static electricity. He'd used it instinctively to close his apartment door when Mrs. Gable had started screaming. Now he focused on the empty coffee mug on his desk. Right, he said, keeping his commentary flowing. So apparently these entities, they give you powers when they subscribe. Or donate. I got telekinesis from the first one. Let me see if I can. He concentrated. The mug wobbled, then lifted an inch off the desk. It was clumsy, unrefined, like trying to manipulate objects with numb fingers. But it worked. The chat exploded. Holy shit, he's moving it with his mind. That's not possible. My patron gave me fire hands but I burned my apartment down, help. Another notification. Crawling_chaos_1337 has donated, 100 bits. Message, weak. Entertain us properly. Suddenly, Leo's vision doubled. He saw his apartment, but overlaid with something else. Fractal patterns that twisted in impossible geometries, colors that didn't exist in any spectrum he knew. A headache bloomed behind his eyes, sharp and insistent. This was what had happened before, the psychic visions that had nearly broken him when he first accepted the subscription. But this time was different. Leo closed his eyes, but the visions didn't fade. They were being pushed into his mind, a chaotic donation of sensory information from his patron. He could feel it, a torrent of madness trying to flood his consciousness. And yet he remained himself. The visions swirled, but they didn't take root. They didn't rewrite his memories or shatter his sense of self. It was like watching a horrifying movie through a clear pane of glass, terrifying, but separate from him. Interesting, he murmured, opening his eyes. The visions faded as he focused on the real world. The donations, they're not just bits. They're packets of something. Power. Information. Madness. He looked at his hands. The telekinetic buzz was stronger now, mingling with something new, a crawling sensation under his skin. The 100-bit donation had added to his power, but it had also tried to add to his insanity. And failed. I think, Leo said slowly, realization dawning, I think I can filter this. He focused on the crawling sensation, imagining it as a stream of data. In his mind's eye, he visualized a filter, a mental sieve that would catch the chaotic, madness-inducing elements and let only the pure power through. It was an instinctive process, born of years moderating toxic chat rooms and filtering spam bots from his streams. The crawling sensation smoothed out. The telekinetic buzz became cleaner, more controlled. When he looked at the coffee mug again, it didn't just lift, it floated smoothly, rotating in mid-air as he directed it with subtle thoughts. I'm calling it the anchor's immunity, he announced to the stream. The name felt right. An anchor held ships steady in stormy seas. And that's what he was doing, wasn't he? Holding steady while madness swirled around him. A knock at his door. Leo froze. The mug clattered to the desk. The chat went silent for a moment, then exploded with warnings. Don't answer it. Could be an echo. Mrs. Gable is still screaming in the hallway sometimes. But the knock came again, tentative, human. Hello? A woman's voice called through the door. Is Leo there? From the stream. Leo hesitated. Then he stood, keeping his commentary going. Someone's at my door. A viewer, I think. Let's see if this is safe. He approached the door cautiously, the telekinetic power humming in his fingertips, ready to slam the door shut if needed. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her late 20s, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. She was clutching a phone, the screen showing his stream. I can hear you, she said, her voice trembling. Through the door. Your voice, it makes the whispers stop. Leo unlocked the door and opened it a crack. Who are you? Maya, she said quickly. I live 2 floors down. I was watching when it happened. The void sky. My patron, she shuddered. It showed me things. Terrible things. I was losing myself. Then I found your stream. She held up her phone. On the screen, Leo saw his own face, heard his own voice explaining the anchor's immunity. The connection was live, with only a second's delay. When I watch, Maya continued, tears in her eyes, the visions fade. Not completely, but enough to think clearly. It's like a psychic shield. Temporary, but it works. Others in the chat are saying the same thing. Leo stared at her, then at the chat scrolling on his monitor across the room. Dozens of comments confirming it. Yeah, when I watch the screaming in my head stops. It only works while the stream is live. If I look away the madness comes back. Oh God, Leo whispered. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He'd been focused on his own survival, on understanding his immunity. But this. He wasn't just immune. His immunity was contagious through the stream. His calm, his filtered perception, his anchor's immunity, it was broadcasting somehow. Not the power itself, but the stabilizing effect. Like a lighthouse beam cutting through psychic fog. Come in, he said, opening the door wider. Maya hurried inside, immediately looking relieved as she entered his apartment. It's stronger here, she breathed. The protection. Being near you. Leo closed and locked the door, then returned to his streaming setup. His mind was racing. If what Maya said was true, then his stream wasn't just entertainment. It was medicine. The only known cure for the madness sweeping the world. How many are affected, he asked, both to Maya and to the stream. Everyone, Maya said, sinking into his spare chair. Everyone who accepted a subscription. The system, it interfaces through our devices. Phones, computers, anything with a screen. It offered power, and people took it. Who wouldn't? And they all went mad. Most. Some faster than others. Mrs. Gable from across the hall, she's gone completely. She just sits in the hallway now, drawing patterns on the wall with her fingernails. Patterns that hurt to look at. Leo glanced at his viewer count, 4,892 now. Mostly humans, based on the chat. But the Eldritch subscribers were still there, watching. Waiting. They want entertainment, he murmured. The patrons. They donate bits, which give power but also try to induce madness. I filter out the madness, keep the power. And when I stream that process, it creates a buffer for the rest of us, Maya finished. A temporary immunity. While we watch, we're safe. The weight of it settled on Leo's shoulders. He'd spent years trying to build an audience, failing at every turn. Now he had thousands of viewers, and their lives literally depended on him continuing to stream. "Okay," he said, turning back to the microphone. His voice was steadier now, purposeful. "Okay, everyone. Here's what we know. The cosmic broadcast system has connected to Earth. It grants powers through Eldritch patrons, but their attention drives humans insane. I have something called the Anchor's immunity. I can filter the madness from the power. And when I stream, that filtering process creates a temporary psychic shield for viewers." He took a breath, looking at Maya, then at the camera. "My broadcasts are humanity's only defense. As long as I stream, you can watch and stay sane. When I stop..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The chat filled with understanding, with terror, with gratitude. For the next hour, Leo experimented. With Maya's help, he tested the limits of his immunity and its broadcast effect. He accepted small donations from his patrons, filtering them consciously, describing the process in detail. Each time, his powers grew slightly, the telekinesis becoming more precise, new sensations indicating other abilities waiting to be unlocked. Maya watched the stream on her phone while Leo broadcast. When he paused his commentary for 30 seconds, she immediately reported the psychic pressure returning. When he resumed, it faded. "It's definitely the voice," she said. "The calm commentary. The focused attention. You're anchoring reality around you, and broadcasting that anchor." Leo nodded, a plan forming. "We need to organize. If this is our only defense, we need to make sure people can access it. The internet is still up, for now. But power grids might fail. Devices will run out of battery." He started giving practical advice, the kind of survivalist tips he'd researched for apocalyptic gaming streams that never took off. How to conserve phone battery. Where to find portable chargers. How to rig emergency power sources. The human viewers responded with gratitude. The Eldritch viewers responded with donations. Crawling_chaos_1337 has donated 250 bits. Message: this organization amuses us. Continue. Whispering_fractal has donated 75 bits. Message: the anchor holds steady. Interesting. With each donation, Leo filtered, grew stronger, and continued his calm commentary. He was building something here, not just a stream, but a lifeline. A community huddled around the digital campfire of his voice, warding off the darkness. Maya eventually fell asleep in the chair, exhausted. Leo kept streaming. His eyes burned from staring at the screen, his throat grew hoarse from talking, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Because every time he thought about stopping, he remembered the comments. "My daughter stopped screaming when I played your stream. I was about to jump from my roof but your voice brought me back. Please don't leave us." He was Leo, failed streamer. 27 years old, living in a mediocre apartment, his biggest achievement before today being a viral clip of him falling off a virtual cliff in a game. Now he was the anchor holding thousands of minds together against cosmic horror. The irony wasn't lost on him. As dawn approached, or what passed for dawn in the starless void, a new notification appeared. Different from the others. It didn't flash or pulse. It simply appeared in the center of his screen, written in stark black text on a field of deepest black, somehow visible despite the lack of contrast. Eldritch Patron, the Watcher in the Dark. Status: observing. Action: has donated 1,000 bits. Unlocked: reality distortion, minor. Leo stared at the message. 1,000 bits. 10 times more than any previous donation. And the patron wasn't one of his subscribers, it was just watching. And now it had donated. He felt it immediately. Not a buzzing or crawling sensation, but a folding. The space around his desk seemed to warp slightly, like heat haze over asphalt. When he reached for his coffee mug, his hand passed through empty air where the mug should have been, then touched it 3 inches to the left. Reality distortion. He could bend space. Just a little. Just around himself. And with the power came the vision, a crushing awareness of infinite darkness, of eyes watching from beyond reality, of a presence so vast it made galaxies seem like dust motes. The madness should have shattered him. Should have unmade his mind. But the anchor's immunity held. Leo filtered. He took the vast, terrifying awareness and strained out the insanity, leaving only the understanding. Space could be bent. Distance could be cheated. Reality was softer than anyone had imagined. He looked at the camera, at the thousands of humans depending on him, at the eldritch entities watching with alien curiosity. Well, he said, his voice calm despite the universe-bending power now humming in his veins. That's new. The stream continued. The anchor held. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, something watched, and was amused. The door to Leo's apartment felt heavier than it ever had before. He stood with his hand on the knob, his streaming rig, a modified backpack with a stabilized 360-degree camera, microphone array, and a compact solar-charged battery pack, strapped securely to his shoulders. On his wrist, a holographic display flickered with his live stream stats, 8,742 current viewers, 9,988 total subscribers, 87% Eldritch entities. The comments scrolled too fast to read, a mix of desperate human pleas and incomprehensible glyphs from his otherworldly patrons. Okay, folks, Leo said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He'd practiced this calm tone for years during his failed gaming streams, but now it carried the weight of survival. First time outside since the sky went dark. Let's see what's left of the city. Maya, the woman who'd arrived yesterday with news of his stream's protective effect, stood behind him, clutching a makeshift knife. Her eyes were wide, but she nodded. I'll monitor from here. The stream's audio is clear, your voice is holding. Good luck, Leo. He took a deep breath, activating the anchor's immunity. It wasn't a physical sensation, but a mental clarity that settled over him like a shield, filtering out the psychic whispers that had driven billions mad. With a twist, he opened the door. The hallway of his apartment building was dim, lit only by emergency lights that cast long, wavering shadows. The air smelled of ozone and something sweetly rotten, like overripe fruit left in the sun. Leo stepped out, the camera capturing every detail. His viewers spiked to 9,100 as he moved, human comments flooding in, "Stay safe, Leo. Your calm is keeping me from screaming. What's that noise?" He descended the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Outside, the world was a nightmare painted in shades of gray and violet. The sky was a starless void, as it had been for days, but now the city itself seemed to breathe. Buildings leaned at impossible angles, their surfaces shimmering with fractal patterns that hurt to look at directly. Streets were cracked, with glowing fissures emitting a low hum. Abandoned cars lay overturned, some half melted into the pavement. Leo kept his commentary flowing, describing what he saw in measured tones. The intersection ahead, it looks like the asphalt has turned into something crystalline. Reflecting light that isn't there. He focused on practical details, a technique he'd honed to maximize the psychic shield for his human viewers. Every word was a lifeline. As he turned onto Main Street, he encountered his first echo. The man was hunched over, muttering to himself, his body twitching erratically. His eyes were milky white, and from his mouth spilled not words, but a stream of geometric shapes that dissolved into the air. An echo, someone whose mind had shattered completely from their patron's attention, leaving only a puppet of madness. Echo ahead, Leo whispered, his heart pounding. He'd heard about them from Maya, but seeing one was different. The man's head snapped up, sensing Leo's presence. With a guttural shriek, he lunged, arms outstretched, fingers bent into claws. Instinct took over. Leo raised a hand, channeling the telekinesis granted by his first patron, the whispering fractal entity. A force pushed the echo back, slamming him against a wall. But the man scrambled up, unfazed, his mutterings growing louder. Leo focused, drawing on the reality distortion ability unlocked by the Watcher in the Dark's donation yesterday. With a mental command, he twisted the space around the echo, creating a pocket of compressed air that held him in place. The effort made Leo's head throb. Using his powers aggressively always came with psychic feedback, a temporary drain on his mental reserves. He backed away, streaming the encounter. They're fast, but not invulnerable. Avoid if you can. His subscriber count ticked up to 9,500. He moved deeper into the city, encountering more echoes. Some wandered aimlessly, tracing patterns in the air, others attacked on sight, driven by fragmented impulses from their lost patrons. Leo defended himself with a mix of telekinesis and reality bends, each action carefully calculated to conserve energy. His commentary never wavered, a steady stream of observations and advice. See that shimmer? That's a weak reality fissure, stay clear, it could pull you in. At one point, he found a group of 3 survivors huddled in a shattered storefront. They were trembling, their eyes darting wildly, on the brink of madness. Leo approached slowly, his camera capturing their terrified faces. "I'm Leo. My stream, it can help." One of them, a young woman with a cut on her cheek, stared at his wrist display. "I've been watching," she whispered. "Your voice," it quieted the whispers. As Leo spoke to them, offering reassurance, something shifted within him. A warmth spread from his core, a new sensation that wasn't part of the anchor's immunity. His holographic display flashed, subscriber milestone reached, 10,000. New ability unlocked, Sanctuary Aura. He didn't need to read the description, he felt it. A gentle, invisible field extended from him, about 10 meters in radius. The survivors within it visibly relaxed, their trembling subsiding. The woman's eyes cleared slightly. "It's quieter," she said, awe in her voice. Leo tested it, stepping back. The aura moved with him, its effect diminishing for those left behind. He returned, and the calm resumed. "This could change everything," he murmured to his stream. "I can protect people directly, not just through the broadcast." He guided the survivors back toward his apartment building, using the sanctuary aura to shield them from nearby echoes. Along the way, he looted supplies from abandoned shops, canned food, water, first aid kits, streaming the process with pragmatic tips. His Eldritch patrons responded with a flurry of donations, likes that strengthened his physical endurance, bits that granted minor reality tweaks. One donation from a patron called the Star Spawn unlocked enhanced reflexes, making his movements quicker, more precise. By the time he reached his neighborhood, his viewer count had stabilized at 9,800, with over 10,200 subscribers. The human comments were grateful, but the Eldritch glyphs swirled more intensely, as if intrigued by his new aura. He dropped the survivors with Maya, who was coordinating a growing group of people drawn to his stream. "They're setting up in the lower apartments," she reported. "Your aura, it's like a bubble of sanity." Leo nodded, exhaustion creeping in. He decided to scout one more block before returning, wanting to map the area for future runs. As he turned a corner, he heard a sound that wasn't the hum of fissures or the mutterings of echoes. It was music, a discordant, pulsating rhythm, accompanied by chanting. Crouching behind a crumpled bus, Leo peered out. In a plaza ahead, a figure stood on a makeshift stage of debris. They were streaming too, with a camera drone circling overhead. The streamer, a man with wild eyes and tattoos that seemed to move on his skin, was broadcasting a violent ritual. Followers, their minds clearly corrupted, danced erratically around a burning symbol carved into the ground. The air crackled with malicious energy, and Leo's sanctuary aura wavered at the edge of its range, repelled by the madness. The rival streamer's voice boomed through a speaker, distorted and fervent. "Praise the glorious Maw. Your donations feed the hunger. More. More." On Leo's display, a notification popped up, rival stream detected, mad profit. Subscribers, 5,000. Warning, high corruption levels. Leo's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an echo, this was someone who had fully embraced the madness, using it to gain power and followers. The man turned, his gaze locking onto Leo's hiding spot, a grin spreading across his face. Well, he broadcasted, his voice echoing in Leo's stream through some cross-feed interference. "Look what we have here." The little anchor, trying to keep the sheep calm. Come out, let's see whose patrons are stronger." Leo stayed hidden, his mind racing. This changed everything. He wasn't just fighting echoes anymore, he was facing someone who saw the apocalypse as an opportunity. As the mad prophet laughed, Leo knew his safe zone was no longer safe. He ended the stream abruptly, signaling a cliffhanger to his viewers, and slipped away, the rival's chanting haunting his thoughts. The morning after his encounter with the mad prophet, Leo stood at the window of his third-floor apartment, watching the city breathe its last. The sky remained that impossible void, a starless, silent blackness that seemed to swallow light itself. But something had changed. Below, in the streets that yesterday had been a chaos of screaming and madness, a fragile order was taking root. His sanctuary aura pulsed around the building like an invisible dome. He could feel it now, a subtle hum in his bones, a warmth spreading from his chest outward. When he concentrated, he could sense the minds within its radius, 37 people, most of them survivors he'd gathered during yesterday's stream. Their thoughts weren't clear, more like emotional weather patterns, but he could tell they were calm. Or at least, calmer than they should be in an apocalypse. "Morning, everyone," Leo said, turning to face his streaming setup. The camera light glowed softly. His viewer count already showed 12,843, mostly eldritch entities with names that scrolled in impossible glyphs, but with a growing number of human usernames. "Welcome back to the stream. Day 4 of, whatever this is." He kept his voice steady, the same calm tone he practiced during his failed gaming streams. Back then, it had been about maintaining professionalism for an audience of maybe 12 people. Now, it was a lifeline. "First order of business," he continued, moving to a whiteboard he'd salvaged from a nearby office. "We're establishing a safe zone here. The radius seems to be about 50 meters from my position, that's where the sanctuary aura extends. If you're watching this and you're nearby, get inside that perimeter. The madness, it doesn't reach here." As he spoke, notifications flickered at the edge of his vision. "Patron, the Watcher in the Dark has donated 500 bits. Patron, Starspawn of Cthulhu has liked your stream. New ability unlocked, enhanced durability, tier 1. He felt the change immediately. His muscles tightened, fibers knitting together with invisible strength. Yesterday's bruises from fighting echoes faded completely. The donation from the Watcher had come with a whisper of spatial awareness. He could sense the dimensions of the room without looking, knowing exactly how many steps to the door, the precise angle of every piece of furniture. "Thank you for the donations," Leo said, making sure to acknowledge them aloud. He'd learned that the Eldritch patrons responded to recognition. "That's helping." "Seriously." A knock at the door. Leo tensed, then relaxed as he recognized the emotional signature, anxiety mixed with gratitude. Sarah, the first survivor who'd found him. He opened the door to find her holding a clipboard, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "We've got 37 people settled in the building," she reported. "Mostly in apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floors. The Johnson family from 2B is organizing food supplies, they were preppers, apparently. And Mr. Chen from the pharmacy downstairs says he has medical supplies." "Good," Leo said, keeping half his attention on the stream. "Tell everyone to stay inside the aura. If they need to leave for supplies, they come with me during broadcasts." Sarah nodded, her eyes flicking to the camera. "They're calling you the anchor, you know. The people downstairs. Because you're holding us together." Leo felt a strange pang at that. Anchor. It fit too well with the name of his immunity. "Just Leo is fine." "Not to them," Sarah said softly. Then, louder for the stream, "We've set up a charging station in the lobby using car batteries. Phones and tablets are our only connection to your broadcast when you're not nearby." "Smart," Leo said, turning back to the camera. "See that, everyone? Community effort. That's what's going to keep us alive. Not just whatever this is." He gestured vaguely at himself. For the next hour, he curated the stream carefully. No panic. No speculation about the larger horror. Just practicalities, how to purify water when the tap still ran, but who knew what was in it now, how to barricade doors against echoes, how to recognize the early signs of madness in someone who'd taken a patron. If their eyes start looking at things that aren't there, Leo explained, or if they're speaking in languages that don't exist, get them inside the aura immediately. The protection seems to reverse early-stage corruption. He demonstrated by stepping to the edge of his apartment's balcony, where the sanctuary aura thinned to nothing. The moment he crossed that invisible boundary, the whispers began, not audible, but psychic impressions from the city's madness. Fragments of alien thoughts, geometries that hurt to contemplate, the hunger of things watching from the void. Leo didn't flinch. The anchor's immunity held, as always. But for his human viewers, he knew the experience would be different. Their connection to him through the stream would dampen the effects, but not eliminate them. "See," he said, stepping back inside the aura. The whispers ceased instantly. "That's why we stay inside the perimeter. The madness is still out there. But in here." He took a deliberate breath. "In here, we can think." Patron, the Fractal Whisperer has donated 1,000 bits. Ability enhanced, sanctuary aura radius increased to 75 meters. The expansion was instantaneous. Leo felt the dome push outward, enveloping half the street now. Below, he saw a group of survivors who'd been huddled just outside the perimeter look up in sudden relief as the protection reached them. "Thank you," Leo said again, this time with genuine emotion. "That just saved lives." He spent the afternoon organizing. With Sarah as his liaison, he visited each occupied apartment, checking on people, reinforcing the message of calm. Everywhere he went, he streamed, not the frantic, sensational content he'd seen from the Mad Prophet, but quiet moments of humanity persisting. In apartment 3C, an elderly woman named Mrs. Garcia was teaching children how to can vegetables from her balcony garden. Leo focused the camera on her steady hands, her calm instructions. "This is how we survive," he narrated. "Not just with powers, but with knowledge passed down. Patron, he who listens in silence has liked your stream X100. New ability unlocked, enhanced senses, tier 1. Suddenly, Leo could hear the heartbeat of the child standing next to Mrs. Garcia. Could smell the distinct sense of every person in the building. Could see the faint thermal signatures of living things through walls. It was overwhelming for a moment, then his immunity filtered it, turning the flood into manageable data. By evening, the safe zone had become something remarkable. People moved between apartments sharing supplies. A watch schedule had been established for the building's entrances. Someone had even started a small library of physical books in the lobby, because screens might fail, a teenage boy explained to Leo's camera, but stories don't. Leo was back in his apartment, preparing to end the day's stream, when the first attack came. It began with a distortion in the air at the edge of his expanded sanctuary aura. The streetlights, those few still working, flickered and bent, casting impossible shadows. Then the whispers returned, but this time they were organized, chanting in sync. "Leo." Sarah's voice came over the walkie-talkie they'd set up. "Something's happening at the western perimeter. They're screaming, but not in pain." In unison. Leo rushed to the window. What he saw froze his blood. A horde of echoes, at least 50 of them, marched down the street toward the safe zone. But these weren't the mindless, shambling creatures he'd encountered yesterday. These moved with purpose, their movements synchronized. And leading them was a figure he recognized from the Mad Prophet's stream, a man in tattered robes, his face obscured by a mask made of what looked like fused electronic components. The Mad Prophet himself. "Everyone inside!" Leo shouted into the stream, dropping all pretense of calm. "Barricade the doors. Don't look at them directly." He could feel the sanctuary aura straining as the horde approached. The chanting echoes were emitting waves of psychic pressure, like hammers against his protective dome. For the first time, Leo felt the aura waver, not break, but flex under the assault. Warning, psychic interference detected. Sanctuary aura integrity, 87%. The Mad Prophet stopped at the very edge of the aura, just outside its protection. He raised his hands, and the echoes fell silent. "Anchor," the Prophet's voice boomed, amplified by something unnatural. It echoed through the streets, through the very walls of the building. "I know you can hear me. I've seen your stream. Your little sanctuary." Leo kept the camera focused on the scene below. His viewer count was skyrocketing, 50,000, 100,000. The Eldritch patrons were particularly active, notifications flooding his vision with donations and likes. "What do you want?" Leo called down, his enhanced voice carrying without needing to shout. "Your immunity," the Prophet screamed, and there was madness in that sound, but a calculated madness. "The system showed me. You have the Anchor's gift. The only one who can interface with the patrons without going mad. Give it to me, and I'll spare your followers." Leo's blood went cold. How did he know the name? The Anchor's immunity was something Leo had only thought to himself, never spoken aloud. "You're mistaken," Leo said, keeping his voice steady for the stream. "For the people depending on him. I'm just a streamer. Like you." "Lies." The Prophet's mask glowed with sickly green light. "The patrons whisper it to me. You're the key. The perfect interface. With your immunity, I could channel their full power without going mad. I could become their true herald on earth." The Prophet raised his hands again. The echoes began to chant once more, and this time, their combined psychic pressure started to crack the air at the edge of the sanctuary aura. Visible fractures of darkness spread like spiderwebs through reality itself. Sanctuary aura integrity, 73%. Warning, critical levels approaching. Leo made a decision. He turned to the camera, to the tens of thousands of human viewers and the unfathomable eldritch ones. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice calm again. "Deliberate. This safe zone, these people, they're under my protection. And if you think I'm just going to hand over whatever this is, He gestured at himself. You haven't been watching my stream closely enough. He reached for the donations he'd been accumulating all day. The bits from the Watcher in the dark. The likes from the Star Spawn. The silent approval from he who listens. He felt the power surge within him, not just enhanced durability or senses, but something new, something the patrons had been building in him through his curated calm. Ability unlocked, kinetic redirection, Tier 1. As the Mad Prophet unleashed the full force of the chanting echoes against the sanctuary aura, Leo didn't strengthen the dome. Instead, he reached out with his new ability, took that psychic assault, and redirected it. Upward. Into the void sky. The backlash was immediate. The prophet staggered as his own attack was turned against the heavens. The echoes chanting broke into confused babble. And for a moment, the very void above them rippled, as if something immense had taken notice. But Leo had no time to consider that. The effort had drained him. The sanctuary aura held, but barely. Sanctuary aura integrity, 61%. Psychic exhaustion, moderate. The Mad Prophet recovered, his mask glowing brighter. You'll break eventually, Anchor. The system wants you. And I will deliver you. He gestured, and the echoes began to surround the building, pressing against the weakened aura from all sides. They weren't attacking yet, just testing, probing for weaknesses. Leo looked at his streaming setup. At the camera that was his weapon and his responsibility. At the viewer count that now included nearly every surviving human in the city. We hold here, he said, to the stream, to the safe zone, to himself. We hold. But as night fell and the echoes began their relentless pressure, Leo knew this was only the beginning. The Mad Prophet wanted his immunity. And he wouldn't stop until he got it. The air tasted of ozone and desperation. Leo stood at the reinforced window of his third-floor apartment, now commandeered as the heart of what survivors had begun calling sanctuary. Outside, the once familiar city street had transformed into a nightmare tableau. Shadows moved with unnatural fluidity, echoes, their minds shattered by eldritch patrons, shuffled in ragged circles around the apartment building. At their center stood the Mad Prophet, his form shimmering with chaotic energy, a crown of floating eyes blinking irregularly above his head. Leo's streaming setup hummed beside him. The viewer count on his monitor flickered, 87,432 human viewers, and an uncountable number of Eldritch subscribers whose usernames were glyphs that hurt to look at directly. He adjusted his headset, forcing calm into his voice. Welcome back, everyone. The situation hasn't improved. The Prophet has us surrounded, but we're holding. Remember to breathe slowly. Focus on my voice. Behind him, the apartment's living room had become a makeshift operations center. Sarah, the first survivor who'd found him, was coordinating with a dozen others, distributing bottled water, checking barricades, comforting children whose eyes were too wide with fear. The sanctuary aura Leo projected extended about 50 yards in all directions, a bubble of relative sanity in the madness-warped city. Within it, people could think clearly, though the pressure at the edges was palpable, a psychic hum that vibrated in the teeth. They're testing the perimeter, Sarah said, joining him at the window. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. Some of the echoes keep walking into the aura and recoiling. Like it burns them. Leo nodded, watching as a gaunt figure in tattered business attire stumbled toward the building. The moment it crossed the invisible boundary of his protection, it shrieked, a sound that was part human agony, part something else entirely, and scrambled back into the swirling crowd. The aura hurts them because it's the opposite of what they've become. They're pure madness, we're clarity. A notification pinged on his stream overlay, patron, the Watcher in the Dark has donated 500 bits. Spatial manipulation available for 30 seconds. Leo felt the power settle into his awareness, a cool, geometric certainty. He could bend space within a limited radius, creating folds or barriers. But using it aggressively came with a cost he'd learned in earlier skirmishes, psychic feedback that strained his connection to the sanctuary aura. Outside, the Mad Prophet raised his arms. His voice, amplified by whatever corruption fueled him, slithered through the air. Leo. Anchor. Your resistance is a flaw in the glorious design. Surrender your immunity. Let the symphony of madness complete its movement. The Prophet's followers, not just echoes but a core of cultists who still retained some twisted coherence, began chanting. The sound wasn't words but a dissonant harmonic that made the windows vibrate. Leo's human viewers in the chat scrolled frantic messages, my head hurts. Keep talking, Leo. I can feel them pushing. Stay with me, Leo said into the microphone, his tone deliberately even. Their chanting is a psychic attack. Focus on practical details. Look around you, name 5 objects you can see. Describe their colors. Ground yourself in reality. He turned to Sarah. Get everyone away from the windows. The prophet is building up to something. As she hurried off, Leo assessed his resources. His enhanced strength and reflexes from earlier donations hummed under his skin. The spatial manipulation ticked down, 25 seconds remaining. And there was the environment itself, the building, the street, the debris from the early days of the apocalypse. He'd spent the last few hours setting traps, gas lines jury-rigged to ignite, piles of rubble poised to collapse, electrical wires stripped and waiting. But the prophet moved first. With a gesture, he sent a wave of echoes charging at the building's main entrance. They moved with jerky, unnatural speed, their bodies blurring at the edges. Leo acted instinctively. He focused on the space just before the door, twisting it with the Watcher's donation. The air shimmered, and the first 3 echoes slammed into an invisible wall, their momentum redirected sideways into each other with sickening crunches. Immediately, a jolt of psychic feedback lanced through Leo's skull. He staggered, gripping the windowsill. On his monitor, the sanctuary aura's radius flickered, shrinking by 5 yards before stabilizing. In the apartment below, someone screamed as the madness pressed closer. Damn it, Leo muttered, shaking his head to clear the ringing. Using his powers offensively weakened his protection. Every attack was a trade-off, safety for defense. The prophet laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You see. You cannot fight without unanchoring yourself. Your nature is to hold, not to strike. More echoes swarmed, this time targeting the weaker points, ground floor windows reinforced with furniture and planks. Leo heard the thuds of bodies throwing themselves against the barriers. He had to think differently. Direct confrontation was losing proposition. Sarah, he called. Phase 2, now. She relayed the order via walkie-talkie. Survivors stationed throughout the building moved to prearranged positions. Leo had realized early that while he couldn't afford to use his powers aggressively often, he could orchestrate the environment to fight for him. Outside, the cultists had gathered near a wrecked delivery truck, using it as cover. Leo had noted it earlier, its fuel tank was intact, and he'd had survivors discreetly leak some of its contents into a grate leading to the sewer line below the street. Now, as the echoes massed there, one of Leo's people, a former mechanic named Ben, used a makeshift sparker from the building's roof. A flash, then a hump of ignition. The ground erupted in a geyser of flame, engulfing a dozen echoes. They didn't scream, they simply came apart into swirling motes of darkness. The prophet snarled, his crown of eyes blinking rapidly. Environmental traps, Leo commented calmly into his stream, for the benefit of his viewers. They don't trigger psychic feedback because I'm not directly using donated powers. Remember, in survival situations, your surroundings are tools. Adapt. His viewer count jumped, 94,211 humans. The chat flooded with gratitude and questions. How did you set that up? Can we do this in our town? The prophet looks pissed. But the victory was short-lived. The prophet, enraged, focused his own power. He gestured, and the air thickened with psychic pressure. The chanting cultists' voices rose to a crescendo, and Leo felt the sanctuary aura begin to compress. It was like being in a diving bell descending too fast, the pressure built in his ears, his chest. Survivors in the building gasped, some dropping to their knees. Leo's immunity held, but his ability to project protection was being overwhelmed. The aura shrank to 30 yards, then 20. Echoes pressed inward, their distorted faces leering through the weakening barrier. I can't, hold it, Leo gritted his teeth, pouring his will into maintaining the aura. But he was reaching his limit. The prophet's attack was a blunt-force psychic assault, leveraging the combined madness of his followers. Then, inspiration struck. A memory from his failed streaming days, how sometimes, the most engaging content wasn't the spectacle, but the tension before it. The prophet was putting on a show for his own patrons, a display of dominance. What if Leo didn't resist directly, but redirected? He switched his streaming focus. Instead of reinforcing the aura, he began narrating the prophet's actions in a detached, almost analytical tone. Observe the cult leader's technique. He's channeling the dissonant harmonies of his followers into a concentrated wave. Notice how the energy coalesces around his hands, inefficient, really. A lot of spillage. As he spoke, he subtly used a trickle of spatial manipulation, not to block, but to guide. He created minor folds in space at the edges of the prophet's attack, diverting fractions of the psychic energy upward into the sky, where it dissipated harmlessly. It was a delicate, precise use of power, minimal enough that the feedback was a dull ache rather than a debilitating spike. The prophet faltered. His performance was being critiqued, his grand assault framed as sloppy. Leo saw the crown of eyes flicker with uncertainty. The chanting wavered. Now! Leo shouted. Survivors on the roof unleashed their final trap. Containers of collected rainwater, rigged with metal scraps to act as conductors, were dropped onto exposed electrical lines nearby. The resulting arcs of electricity didn't hit many echoes, but the light and sound were dazzling, a distraction. In that moment of confusion, Leo pushed the sanctuary aura outward with all his remaining strength. It surged back to its full radius, throwing the closest echoes back. The prophet staggered, his connection to his followers disrupted. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of dying flames and the heavy breathing of the survivors. The echoes milled aimlessly, the cultists looked to their leader, who stood seething but momentarily spent. Leo leaned against the window, exhausted. His stream viewer count ticked over, 102,567 humans. Word was spreading, Sanctuary had held. "We've repelled the first assault," he said into the microphone, his voice hoarse but steady. "But stay vigilant. This isn't over." As if on cue, a new notification flashed across his vision, stark and luminous. It wasn't from a patron's donation, but a system-wide message. "Patron, the Star Spawn requests entertainment, loot the alien ruins downtown. Reward, major power upgrade." Leo stared at the words. Downtown. Where the madness was thickest, where reality itself bent into impossible shapes. A quest from one of his most powerful subscribers. He looked out at the retreating figures of the prophet and his horde, then at the scared but determined faces of the survivors around him. To protect them, he would need more power. And the system had just offered a way. He took a deep breath. The siege was over, but a new, more dangerous challenge had begun. The morning after the siege dawned gray and heavy, the air still tasting of smoke and ozone. Leo stood at the edge of his apartment's makeshift broadcast station, his fingers tracing the smooth plastic of his headset. The notification from the Star Spawn glowed persistently in his vision, a line of shifting, iridescent text that seemed to pulse with a rhythm not meant for human eyes. Asterisk Patron, the Star Spawn, requests entertainment, loot the alien ruins downtown. Reward, major power upgrade, asterisk. He took a deep breath, the anchor's immunity settling around his mind like a familiar cloak. No fear, no madness, just the cool, analytical calm that had become his signature. Behind him, the safe zone hummed with activity. Survivors moved through the reinforced corridors, their faces etched with exhaustion but lit by a fragile hope. Mara, the woman who'd first sought refuge at his stream, approached with a worn backpack. "You're really going," she said, her voice low. It wasn't a question. "The Star Spawn isn't asking," Leo replied, adjusting the camera mounted on his shoulder. It was a modified piece of tech, jury-rigged to interface with the system, a gift from an engineer viewer who donated schematics via bits. "And if this major power upgrade can strengthen the sanctuary aura." He didn't finish the thought. They both knew the stakes. The Mad Prophet's attack had shown how thin their defenses were. Leo's immunity held, but the psychic feedback from aggressive power use had left him trembling for hours afterward, his aura flickering like a dying bulb. He needed more strength, more control, more ways to protect the 100,000 human souls now depending on his voice. Mara handed him the backpack. Supplies. Water, rations, a first aid kit. And this. She pressed a small, crystalline device into his palm. It shimmered with a soft blue light. One of the techs cobbled it together from donated fragments. "It's supposed to detect reality distortions. Might help in there." Leo nodded, slipping it into his pocket. "Keep the stream up on the main screen. My commentary should hold the aura steady, even from a distance. If anything goes wrong, we'll know," Mara finished, her eyes grave. "And we'll pray." He didn't believe in prayer anymore, not after the void had swallowed the sky, but he appreciated the sentiment. With a final glance at the safe zone, Leo stepped into the ruined streets. Downtown was a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered glass, but it was the alien ruins that dominated the horizon. They had manifested overnight weeks ago, a cluster of structures that defied every law of physics Leo had ever learned. From a distance, they looked like a child's nightmare of geometry, angles that bent inward upon themselves, surfaces that reflected colors not found in any spectrum, and a low, subsonic hum that vibrated in the bones rather than the ears. As he approached, Leo activated his stream. The familiar interface flickered to life in his peripheral vision, viewer count, chat scrolling with frantic comments, and the ever-present list of patrons, eldritch names that shifted and writhed like living things. He cleared his throat, the microphone catching the subtle rasp. "Hey everyone, Leo here. We're heading into the unknown today. The Starspawn has issued a, let's call it an invitation." His voice was calm, measured, a deliberate contrast to the surreal landscape ahead. "I'll be streaming the whole exploration. Remember to focus on my voice if the visuals get intense. It'll help." The chat exploded with support. "You got this, Leo. My head already feels clearer just listening. Asterisk, the watcher in the dark is watching. Don't disappoint, asterisk. Please be careful." He smiled faintly. The human comments were a lifeline, the eldritch ones, a reminder of the razor's edge he walked. Taking a steadying breath, Leo crossed the threshold into the ruins. The change was immediate. The air grew thick and cold, smelling of ozone and something older, like dust from a tomb that had never known light. The ground beneath his feet wasn't stone or metal, but a substance that yielded slightly, then hardened, as if reacting to his presence. Walls rose around him, not in straight lines, but in spirals that seemed to converge and diverge simultaneously. Leo's mind tried to make sense of it, to find patterns, but the anchor's immunity forced it into passive observation. "No madness, just data. The architecture is non-Euclidean," he narrated, his voice echoing strangely in the vast space. "Angles don't add up to 180 degrees. I'm seeing recursive patterns. It's like a maze designed by a god with a sense of humor." He moved cautiously, the reality distortion device in his pocket pulsing softly. The first hazard appeared without warning, a section of the floor simply unfolded, revealing a drop into a darkness that seethed with faint, bioluminescent shapes. Leo leaped back, his heart rate spiking, but his voice never wavered. "Watch that step. The terrain is unstable. It's not just physical, it's like reality itself is fluid here." As he navigated, the eldritch patrons began to react. Notifications flickered in his vision. "The Starspawn liked your stream. The Whispering Fractal donated 500 bits. The Watcher in the Dark is enjoying the show." With each like and donation, Leo felt a surge of power. The Starspawn's like strengthened his muscles, making jumps easier, his movements more precise. The bits from the Whispering Fractal manifested as a faint, shimmering shield around him, deflecting a sudden rain of crystalline shards that erupted from the ceiling. He channeled the energy carefully, filtering it through the anchor's immunity, shaping it into tools rather than letting it run wild. "The patrons are responding," he said, ducking under a low-hanging arch that twisted like a corkscrew. "Their donations are giving me minor boosts. Shield, enhanced agility. It's manageable, as long as I stay focused." He pressed deeper, the ruins unfolding into a vast chamber. Here, the architecture shifted from mere impossibility to active hostility. Walls pulsed with a sickly green light, and the air crackled with static that made his hair stand on end. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, atop which rested a device of alien design, a sphere of interlocking rings that rotated slowly, emitting a low, melodic tone. "That's our target," Leo murmured. "Or at least, part of it." As he approached, the room reacted. The floor dissolved into a lattice of light, and from the shadows, figures emerged. Not echoes, these were different. They were constructs of shimmering energy, humanoid but faceless, moving with a jerky, unnatural grace. Guardians, Leo realized. He'd seen enough video games to recognize a boss fight when he saw one. "We've got company," he said, his voice dropping to a tense whisper. "Energy constructs. Probably automated defenses." The first one lunged, a blade of solidified light forming in its hand. Leo dodged, his enhanced agility saving him by inches. He couldn't use aggressive powers, not without risking psychic feedback, so he relied on speed and wit. Darting between the constructs, he grabbed a loose piece of the alien masonry, a rod of cold, metallic substance, and swung it like a club. It connected with a satisfying crack, dissipating one of the guardians into motes of light. The chat scrolled furiously. "Holy crap, that was close. Leo's moving like a pro. The Starspawn is loving this. More likes incoming. Indeed, the notifications came faster now, a cascade of approval from the Eldritch audience. Leo felt the power building, a reservoir of energy that he carefully siphoned into his shield and physical enhancements. He weaved through the guardians, using the environment to his advantage, ducking behind unstable pillars that collapsed when struck, blurring the constructs into patches of floor that flickered and vanished. It was a dance of survival, narrated in real time. They're predictable, pattern-based. Watch for the glow in their chests, it brightens before they attack. Use the terrain. Stay mobile. His calm commentary was a lifeline for the human viewers, he knew. Every word reinforced the sanctuary aura, a psychic blanket that stretched across the miles to his safe zone and beyond. He could almost feel their collective breath held, their minds clinging to his voice like a raft in a storm. Finally, with a last, desperate swing, he shattered the final guardian. The room fell silent, the only sound the hum of the alien sphere. Leo approached the pedestal, his hand outstretched. As his fingers brushed the device, a shock of cold energy raced up his arm, not painful, but profound, like touching the heartbeat of the universe. The sphere unfolded, the ring separating to reveal a hollow core. Inside lay not treasure, but a data crystal, clear and flawless, etched with minute patterns that glowed with an inner light. And beside it, a smaller, older object, a digital recorder of human design, scratched and battered, with a faded logo that read Foundation Research Outpost 7. Leo's breath caught. He picked up the recorder, his thumb hovering over the play button. The alien ruins, the guardians, the Starspawn's quest, it all pointed to something deeper. This wasn't random loot. This was a message. He activated the recorder. The voice that crackled to life was human, male, strained with static and an undercurrent of desperation. Asterisk log entry, Dr. Eris Thorne, Project Anchor. Date, irrelevant now. The predictions were correct. The cosmic broadcast system is not a gift, it's a harvesting mechanism. It consumes civilizations by driving them mad, feeding on their consciousness. We engineered a countermeasure, genetic modifications to create an anchor, a mind capable of interfacing with the entities without succumbing. Subject 0 showed promise, but we lost contact after the Void event. If anyone finds this, know that the anchor is our only hope. The Foundation's work must, asterisk. The recording cut off abruptly, devolving into static. Leo stood frozen, the data crystal cold in his palm, the words echoing in the silent chamber. Project Anchor. Genetic modifications. Subject 0. The pieces clicked into place with a terrible, icy clarity. His immunity wasn't luck. It wasn't a fluke of biology. It was design. He was the experiment, the weapon, the anchor. For the first time since the apocalypse began, a flicker of something other than calm stirred in Leo's chest, not madness, but a deep, unsettling dread. He looked up, the ruins seeming to close in around him, their impossible geometry now feeling like a cage. The Starspawn's notification still glowed in his vision, but it was the last words of the recording that hung in the air, unspoken yet deafening. Subject 0. And he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the quest was only the beginning. The safe zone hummed with an energy Leo hadn't felt before, not the static-charged dread of the alien ruins, but the purposeful buzz of human activity. He stood at the window of what had become his command center, his old apartment, now fortified with scavenged metal plating and glowing runes of eldritch energy donated by patrons. Below, in the courtyard between buildings, survivors moved in organized patterns. They were building. Sarah, the first woman who'd found sanctuary in his stream, directed a team reinforcing the perimeter fence with twisted car frames and shimmering energy barriers. Her movements were confident now, a far cry from the terrified survivor who'd stumbled through his door weeks ago. Leo watched as she demonstrated how to channel residual psychic energy into the barriers, a trick he'd taught her after discovering his sanctuary aura could be temporarily imprinted on objects. Viewer count holding steady at 127,000 human, the system interface whispered in his mind, a constant ticker tape of data only he could see. Eldritch patrons, 8,432. Current donations, 347 bits/minute. Sanctuary aura radius, 200 meters. He turned from the window, his eyes falling on the two objects on his makeshift desk, the alien data crystal, pulsing with soft violet light, and the human recorder, a sleek, metallic device that looked decades more advanced than anything from before the apocalypse. The recorder's surface bore a single engraved symbol, an anchor within a circle. You going to play it again? Sarah's voice came from the doorway. She leaned against the frame, wiping grease from her hands with a rag. "Third time today." "I need to understand," Leo said, his voice calm, the same measured tone he used during broadcasts. "Every time I listen, I catch something new." He activated the recorder. The holographic display shimmered to life above the device, showing a laboratory that defied pre-apocalypse technology. Clean white surfaces, floating displays, and in the center, a containment pod holding what looked like a human fetus suspended in amber fluid. "Project Anchor, log entry 47, a woman's voice said, clinical and precise. Subject 0 shows promising neural resilience. Genetic modifications to prefrontal cortex and amygdala appear stable. The Foundation simulations indicate a 78% probability that Subject 0 will maintain cognitive coherence during Stage 3 exposure." The recording shifted. Now the same woman, Dr. Eris, according to the name tag floating beside her, stood before a council of shadowy figures. Their faces were obscured, but their robes bore the same anchor symbol. "The timetable is accelerating," one of the figures said, voice distorted. "The cosmic alignment occurs in 23 years. Project Anchor must produce a viable interface by then, or humanity will be unprepared for the broadcast. We're engineering a mind that can look into the abyss without going mad," Dr. Eris replied. "But at what cost? Subject Zero's entire existence will be a weapon. A living anchor. A necessary one," another figure intoned. "Better one mind sacrificed than all of humanity consumed." The recording ended. Leo stared at the space where the hologram had been, his hands resting flat on the desk. His heartbeat remained steady, a physiological response he'd noticed since the apocalypse began. No adrenaline spike, no panic. Just cold, clear processing. "They made you," Sarah said softly, stepping into the room. "Like a tool." "An anchor," Leo corrected, turning the word over in his mind. "Designed to hold the line when reality started to unravel." He thought of his childhood, the foster homes, the feeling of never quite belonging. The strange medical tests he'd undergone at 17, supposedly for a genetic study scholarship. Had that been them? The Foundation, preparing their weapon. "Does it change anything?" Sarah asked, pulling up a chair. "You're still you. Still keeping us sane." Leo looked at her. At the dark circles under her eyes that were slowly fading. At the way her hands no longer trembled. "It changes everything," he said. "If they engineered me, then they knew this was coming. They let it happen." He stood, pacing the length of the room. The stream was live, always live now, a constant broadcast that maintained the sanctuary aura. His Eldritch patrons watched his agitation with interest, he felt their attention like pressure against his mind. A notification flashed, "The Watcher in the Dark, has donated 500 bits. Query, does knowledge of origin diminish function?" Leo ignored the donation for now, letting the energy pool in his reserve. He needed to think. "We should tell the others," Sarah said. "Not yet," Leo replied. "They're building something here. Hope. If they learn this was planned." He shook his head. "Morale matters. You've seen what happens when hope fractures." He had. Just yesterday, a new arrival, a man named Carl, had broken down weeping at the perimeter, convinced the safe zone was an illusion. It had taken 30 minutes of focused broadcasting, Leo's voice layering calm commentary over Carl's panic, to stabilize him. The psychic feedback had given Leo a migraine that throbbed for hours. A knock at the door. Tom, one of the scavengers, poked his head in. "Leo, we've got a problem with the water purification runes. The energy patterns are writhing." Leo followed him downstairs, Sarah at his heels. The community had grown to nearly 300 survivors in the weeks since he'd established the safe zone. They'd organized into teams, builders, scavengers, medics, and, most importantly, broadcast relays. People who could mentally repeat Leo's commentary, extending the sanctuary aura's effective range through a kind of psychic echo. The courtyard was a hive of activity. Makeshift shelters had given way to more permanent structures, salvaged brick and metal reinforced with eldritch energy. Children played near the central fountain, which now glowed with soft blue light as purification runes filtered contaminated rainwater. Eldritch symbols, donated by patrons who found the human struggle entertaining, adorned every surface. At the purification station, the runes were indeed writhing. The glowing patterns twisted like snakes, their light flickering between blue and a sickly green. Psychic contamination, Leo diagnosed immediately. Something's bleeding through from the outside. He focused, reaching for the stream interface in his mind. Human viewers, note the energy instability here. Watch how the patterns destabilize when external psychic pressure exceeds the rune's capacity. His voice, broadcast through the mental link, carried that same calm authority. He felt the human viewers latch onto it, 127,000 minds using his consciousness as a lifeline. Simultaneously, he directed a thread of his own energy into the runes, smoothing out the distortions. The green flickering ceased, the blue stabilized. Star Spawn, likes your technical analysis, the system whispered. +5 to energy manipulation precision. Thank you, Tom said, relief evident. We've been seeing more of these fluctuations. Like something's pushing against the barrier. Leo looked up. The sky above the safe zone was its usual starless void, but at the edges of his sanctuary aura, where the blue-tinged psychic barrier met the corrupted world, he could see distortions. Ripples, like heat haze, warping the air. Gather the relay team, he told Sarah. I need to boost the broadcast strength. As she hurried off, Leo returned to his apartment. He needed to study the recorder more carefully. There had to be clues about the Foundation's plans, about what else they'd engineered. He played the log entries again, this time focusing on background details. The laboratory equipment bore serial numbers with Foundation logos. The calendar on one wall showed dates from 20 years ago. And in one brief flash, he saw a map, locations marked across the globe. Project Anchor Facilities, he murmured, freezing the image. They weren't just working on me. The realization hit like cold water. Other subjects. Other potential anchors. Were they out there now? Had they survived? Or had they broken under the pressure, becoming echoes, or worse? His stream interface flickered. A new notification, urgent and pulsing red, psychic anomaly detected approaching from northeast. Classification, reality storm. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. Threat level, catastrophic. Leo's breath caught. He'd heard rumors of such storms, waves of pure madness emitted by newly arrived eldritch entities. They scoured areas clean of coherent thought, leaving only permanent insanity in their wake. He went to the window again. The distortions at the barrier's edge were more pronounced now. The air shimmered with prismatic fractures, and a low hum vibrated through the building's foundations. Sarah returned with the relay team, 12 people whose minds had shown particular resilience. They stood in his apartment, faces grim. We felt it, said Marcus, the oldest of them, a former teacher. Like a headache that isn't yours. Reality storm, Leo confirmed. It'll hit in 6 hours. If it breaches the sanctuary aura. He didn't need to finish. They'd all seen what happened to minds exposed to unfiltered eldritch energy. What do we do? Sarah asked. Leo looked at them, at the community growing outside, at the children by the fountain, at the hope they'd built from ruins. He thought of the Foundation's recording. Subject Zero's entire existence will be a weapon. We broadcast, he said, decision crystallizing. All of us. Continuously. We layer our voices, our focus, our will. We turn this safe zone into a fortress of sanity. He activated his stream interface fully, letting the Eldritch patrons feel his determination. Watcher in the dark, Star Spawn, all patrons, this will be entertainment. Watch us hold the line. Donations flooded in. Bits, likes, supernatural currencies he barely understood. Power surged through him, not just physical enhancement, but deeper capabilities. Reality manipulation. Temporal dilation. Psychic amplification. Relay team, positions, he ordered. Marcus, take the eastern perimeter. Sarah, western. I'll anchor the center broadcast. We maintain rotation, when one tires, another takes over. No breaks longer than 5 minutes. They moved with purpose. Below, the community sensed the coming threat. The builders redoubled their efforts on the barriers. The medics prepared sedatives and restraints for anyone who might break. Children were ushered into the most fortified building, the old parking garage they'd converted into a bunker. Leo set up his broadcast station at the window, cameras and psychic amplifiers arrayed before him. He looked at the approaching storm on the horizon, a wall of swirling colors that hurt to perceive, a symphony of wrongness audible only to the mind. Human viewers, he began, his voice calm as still water. What you're about to witness is a Class 7 psychic phenomenon. Do not attempt to perceive it directly. Focus on my voice. Focus on the safe zone. Remember what you're protecting. The viewer count began to climb. 150,000, 200,000. Word was spreading. Leo glanced at the Foundation recorder one last time. The anchor symbol seemed to mock him. Weapon. Tool. Creation. Then he looked at Sarah, directing survivors with fierce compassion. At Marcus, comforting a frightened child. At the community they'd built. He wasn't just Subject Zero. He was Leo. And he would hold the line. The storm approached, its psychic pressure making the air crackle with static. The sanctuary aura shimmered, straining at the edges. In 6 hours, it would hit. And Leo began to broadcast. The sky began to bleed. Leo stood on the reinforced rooftop of what had once been an apartment building, now the central broadcast hub of his growing sanctuary. 6 hours had passed since the system alert, 6 hours of frantic preparation that felt both endless and insufficient. Around him, his relay team of 12 survivors worked with grim efficiency, checking cables, backup generators, and the makeshift antenna array they'd cobbled together from scavenged satellite dishes. The air tasted of ozone and impending doom. 5 minutes until estimated impact, called Maya, the former electrical engineer who'd become his technical lead. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she adjusted a frequency modulator. All systems green. Backup power online. Leo nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The void above, that starless black that had replaced the sky 3 weeks ago, was beginning to ripple. Not with light, but with something deeper, something that made the eyes water to look at directly. Colors that didn't exist in any spectrum pulsed at the edges of perception, anti-green, silent red, the screaming violet that haunted dreams. He could feel it already, a pressure against his mind that would have shattered any normal person. His anchor's immunity held, but even for him, it was like standing before a hurricane. Remember the protocol, he said, his voice calm through the headset microphone. The stream was already live, his face displayed on hundreds of thousands of screens worldwide. When it hits, keep your eyes on your work. Don't look at the sky. Don't listen to the whispers. If you feel your thoughts slipping, tap the sanctuary charm. Each member of his team wore a small piece of carved stone around their neck, a focus he created using donations from the Watcher in the dark. They weren't true immunity, but they amplified the protective effect of his broadcast for those physically near him. Below, in the fortified building and surrounding barricaded streets, nearly 300 survivors huddled around screens, radios, any device that could receive his signal. Their lives depended on his voice staying steady for the next 24 hours. 2 minutes, Maya whispered. The rippling intensified. The air grew cold, then hot, then cold again in rapid succession. A sound began, not through the ears, but directly in the mind. It started as a distant hum, the vibration of something vast moving through dimensions humanity wasn't meant to perceive. Leo's viewer count on the stream overlay ticked upward, 150,000. 200,000, 250,000 human viewers. The Eldritch patron count remained steady at 47, but their names in the sidebar glowed with unnatural intensity. The star spawn, the Watcher in the dark, she who whispers fractals, the hungry void, all watching, waiting to be entertained. Here we go, Leo said softly, then raised his voice for the stream. Welcome, everyone. For those just joining, my name is Leo. We're about to experience what the system calls a reality storm. I'll be broadcasting continuously through it. Keep your eyes on this stream. Listen to my voice. It will help. He didn't mention that it was the only thing that would help. The first wave hit. It wasn't wind. It was a wall of pure conceptual dissonance. The sky tore open along seams that shouldn't exist, and madness poured forth. The hum became a scream, 1,000 screams, layered over each other in impossible harmonies. The buildings around him didn't move, but they seemed to twist in his peripheral vision, angles becoming wrong, geometry betraying itself. Colors bled from the world, replaced by those impossible hues that hurt to perceive. On the rooftop, Maya gasped. One of the younger techs, a man named Ben, dropped his clipboard and clutched his head. The whispers, he moaned. They're telling me to focus on me. Leo's voice cut through, amplified by both the microphone and a subtle application of his sanctuary aura. He pushed the ability to its limits, feeling the strain immediately. It was like holding up a collapsing ceiling with his bare hands. Ben, look at me. What's my name? Leo, Ben stammered, his eyes wide with terror. Good. Now check the uplink status. Report. Forcing them to work, to focus on concrete tasks, that was the key. Leo kept talking, a steady stream of commentary that was part survival guide, part soothing monologue, part performance for the entities watching. The storm appears to be emitting high levels of psychic interference, he said, his voice calm even as his body trembled with effort. Notice how the light bends around the central anomaly. That suggests dimensional bleeding. Don't try to understand it. Just observe. His human viewer count jumped, 300,000. 400,000, comments flooded the chat, too fast to read, but the sentiment was clear, your voice is keeping me sane. I can see the storm outside my window but listening to you makes it bearable. Thank you. And the donations came. A donation from the Watcher in the Dark, 5,000 bits. Reality distortion resistance increased. A donation from the Star Spawn, 10,000 likes. Physical endurance enhanced. A donation from She Who Whispers Fractals, show us more. Show us how you withstand. Leo felt the power settle into him like additional layers of armor. His muscles strengthened. The pressure against his mind lessened slightly, though the storm's intensity continued to build. He could see the effect on his team, their postures straightened, their movements became more confident. The sanctuary charms around their necks glowed softly. Hour 3. The storm changed. The screaming coalesced into voices. Not one, not 100, but millions, the collective madness of every mind that had shattered since the apocalypse began. They whispered promises, threats, secrets that burned to hear. Join us, they sighed. It's easier to stop fighting. Let go. Become part of the beautiful chaos. On the street below, a woman screamed. Then another. Leo saw through the rooftop access door as several survivors in the building's upper floors began to convulse. His sanctuary aura was stretched too thin, protecting the relay team took priority, but the edges were fraying. We're losing people in sectors 3 and 4, someone shouted over the comms. Leo made a decision. He reached deep, tapping into the reservoir of power his patrons had donated. Sanctuary aura, expanded field. The effort was immense, like trying to inflate a balloon the size of a city. Sweat poured down his face. His bones ached. But the aura expanded, pushing back the whispering voices. The convulsing survivors stilled, gasping for air. His Eldritch viewer count ticked up, 48. A new patron. The Dreamer in the Storm. Its donation appeared immediately, a gift of resilience. Temporary psychic fortification granted. Hour 6. Physical manifestations began. The storm wasn't just psychic anymore. Things took shape in the writhing air, half-formed limbs, eyes that blinked from nothingness, geometries that promised infinite knowledge and infinite despair. One of them, a floating mass of shifting angles, drifted toward the rooftop. Leo! Maya screamed. He didn't flinch. He turned his camera toward it. Interesting, he said, his voice still calm though his heart hammered against his ribs. This appears to be a thought-form manifestation. Notice how its edges phase in and out of reality. This is what happens when pure conceptual energy interacts with our dimension. The thing paused, as if listening. A donation from the Watcher in the Dark, 15,000 bits. Spatial awareness enhanced. A donation from the Star Spawn, entertaining. Continue. Leo realized something then. The entities weren't just watching, they were judging his performance. His calm analysis in the face of horror was the entertainment. He leaned into it. The structure suggests a non-Euclidean origin. Probably a bleed-through from what the Foundation records called the unthought realm. Don't look directly at the central vortex, your mind will try to parse patterns that don't exist. The thought form drifted away, dissipating like smoke. Hour 12. The storm reached its peak. The sky was now a kaleidoscope of madness. Time itself stuttered, moments repeating, skipping, stretching. Leo's body was failing. He'd been standing for 12 hours straight, maintaining both the broadcast and the expanded sanctuary aura. His throat was raw from continuous commentary. His mind, though immune to insanity, was exhausted from the sheer cognitive load of filtering the storm's effects for his viewers. Leo, you need to rest, Maya said, her own face drawn with fatigue. Even with the enhancements. Can't, he croaked. If I stop talking, even for a minute, the aura flickers. People will die. He'd seen the numbers. His human viewer count was now over 2 million. Worldwide. Every one of them depending on his voice to anchor them against the storm. The weight of that responsibility was a physical pressure. Hour 18. Hallucinations began affecting even those protected by the aura. Ben, the young tech, suddenly stood and pointed at nothing. "Do you see them?" he whispered. "The beautiful ones. They're dancing in the light." "It's not real," Leo said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Ben, sit down. Check the power levels." "But they're so pretty." Leo reached out, not physically but psychically, through the connection his broadcast created. He pushed a wave of calm, of clarity. "Ben. The power levels." Ben blinked, shook his head, and returned to his console. But Leo felt the drain. He was running on empty now, burning through his own life force to keep everything together. Hour 22. The storm showed signs of weakening. The impossible colors began to fade. The screaming softened to a hum again. But this was the most dangerous time, when exhaustion made minds vulnerable, when the temptation to relax vigilance was strongest. "Almost there," Leo whispered, to himself and to the millions listening. "Stay with me. Just a little longer." His body was shaking uncontrollably now. He leaned against the broadcast console for support. The screen showed his own face, pale, sweat-soaked, eyes hollow with fatigue. But still calm. Still anchoring. A donation from all active patrons, collective appreciation. Temporary vitality boost granted. The surge of energy was like a lightning strike. Leo straightened, his voice strengthening. "The storm is receding. Notice how the dimensional tiers are healing. Reality is reasserting itself. This is important, the storm wasn't an attack. It was an emission. Like radiation from something passing by. Something newly arrived in our reality." He didn't say what they all feared, that something was still out there. Hour 24. The last of the storm cleared. The sky returned to its normal void, if a starless black could be called normal. The pressure lifted. The whispers faded to silence. For the first time in a day, Leo could hear the wind again. "Storm has passed," Maya said, her voice breaking with relief. "All systems, still functional. We made it." Below, cheers erupted from the building. Survivors embraced, wept, laughed with the hysterical joy of those who've stared into the abyss and survived. Leo didn't cheer. He carefully, slowly, powered down the broadcast. "This is Leo, signing off for now. The storm has passed. Stay safe. Help each other. I'll be back." The stream ended. His viewer count at closure, 2.3 million human viewers. 51 Eldritch patrons. Then his legs gave out. He collapsed to the rooftop, muscles screaming in protest. Maya and Ben rushed to him. "Medic!" Maya shouted. "I'm fine," Leo managed, though every fiber of his being said otherwise. "Just, need a minute." But as he lay there, looking up at the void sky, he felt it. A change. His sanctuary aura had permanently expanded from the ordeal. His connection to his patrons had deepened. And his understanding of what he was, this anchor, this weapon, had crystallized. He'd held back madness for millions. The weight of that knowledge was heavier than any fatigue. He was still lying there when the rooftop access door opened again. Not a medic. A stranger. The man was tall, dressed in clothing that was too clean, too intact for the apocalypse. He wore a long coat that seemed to drink the light. His face was sharp, intelligent, and utterly calm. He carried no visible weapons, but something about him made the relay team tense. "Leo," the man said, his voice smooth and measured. "My name is Dr. Eris Thorne. I'm with the organization you've been learning about. The Foundation." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I've come to discuss your purpose." The world swam back into focus through a haze of exhaustion. Leo lay on a makeshift cot in what had once been his living room, now transformed into the command center of his growing sanctuary. The psychic storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie silence broken only by the soft hum of generators and the distant murmur of survivors moving through the building. His body felt like it had been stretched across continents, every muscle screamed in protest, his head throbbed with the phantom echoes of madness he'd spent 24 hours holding at bay. He blinked, trying to clear the fog from his vision. The last thing he remembered was the storm clearing, the sky returning to its starless void, and then collapsing as the adrenaline finally gave out. Now, sunlight, or what passed for sunlight in this new world, a dull grayish glow filtered through the perpetual cloud cover, streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. "You're awake." The voice was calm, measured, with an academic precision that felt out of place amid the apocalypse. Leo turned his head, wincing at the stiffness in his neck. A man stood by the doorway, leaning against the frame with an air of casual observation. He was perhaps in his late 40s, with silver-streaked dark hair swept back from a high forehead, and sharp eyes that missed nothing behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a tailored suit that looked untouched by the chaos outside, though a faint shimmer around its edges suggested some kind of protective field. "Dr. Eris Thorne," the man said, stepping forward. "From the Foundation. You've been out for about 6 hours. Your people have been tending to you, quite loyal, I must say." Leo pushed himself up on his elbows, his mind racing. The name triggered something, the recording from the alien ruins, the mention of Project Anchor. His throat was dry, his voice raspy when he spoke. "The Foundation. You're the ones who engineered me." Dr. Thorne smiled, a thin, practiced expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Straight to the point. I appreciate that." "Yes, Leo. Or should I say, Subject Alpha 7. You were our masterpiece." He pulled up a chair, sitting with the poise of a lecturer about to deliver a pivotal lesson. Leo's hands trembled slightly, from exhaustion, or from the weight of what was coming. He glanced at his streaming rig in the corner, still active, its screen showing his viewer count holding steady at over 2 million humans and an uncountable number of eldritch entities. The chat scrolled with messages of relief and concern, but he muted it for now. This conversation needed privacy. "Start from the beginning," Leo said, his voice gaining strength. "Who are you? What did you do to me?" Dr. Thorne leaned back, steepling his fingers. The Foundation was founded in the late 20th century by a group of scientists, philosophers, and, well, let's call them visionaries. We'd uncovered evidence, through astrophysical anomalies, archaeological digs, and psychic research, that humanity was not alone in the cosmos. And not in the friendly, little green men sense. We detected entities of such immense power and alien consciousness that their mere attention could unravel reality as we know it. He paused, watching Leo's reaction. Leo felt a cold knot form in his stomach. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about purpose, about being a pawn in a game he hadn't known he was playing. "We predicted the apocalypse," Dr. Thorne continued. "The cosmic broadcast system, as you call it, isn't some random phenomenon. It's a predatory entity, a cosmic parasite that feeds on sentient consciousness. It interfaces with civilizations, offers them power through these patrons, and then drives them mad, consuming their psychic energy as they collapse into insanity. We've seen it happen before, in ruins we've found on Mars, in artifacts buried deep beneath the Earth. Entire species, wiped out not by war or disease, but by their own unraveling minds." Leo's breath caught. The alien ruins downtown, the strange technology, it all clicked into place. "So you decided to fight back?" "In a manner of speaking," Dr. Thorne said. "We couldn't stop the system from arriving. Its scale is astronomical. But we could prepare a defense. Project Anchor was our solution, genetic engineering to create individuals capable of interfacing with these eldritch entities without succumbing to madness. We needed anchors, stable points in the psychic storm who could shield others, who could harness the system's own mechanisms against it." He stood, pacing slowly as he spoke. "You, Leo, were our most successful subject. Born 32 years ago to surrogate parents who were Foundation members. Your DNA was modified in utero, enhanced neural plasticity, a unique neurotransmitter balance, psychic dampeners woven into your very cells. We called it the Anchor's immunity, though you named it yourself. You were designed to be calm under pressure, to process chaotic sensory input without breaking, to be the perfect host for powers that would shatter any ordinary mind." Leo felt a wave of vertigo. His entire life, his failures as a streamer, his quiet perseverance, even his immunity, all of it was planned. He wasn't a lucky survivor, he was a weapon, forged in a lab and set loose into the world. Anger bubbled up, hot and sudden. "You made me a lab rat. You let billions die while you waited for your experiment to pay off." Dr. Thorne's expression didn't change. "We saved who we could. The Foundation has shelters worldwide, protecting thousands. But yes, sacrifices were necessary. The system's arrival was inevitable. Without anchors, humanity would have been completely consumed within weeks. You've seen the echoes, those are the lucky ones. Most just, cease to be, their consciousness devoured entirely. He stopped pacing, turning to face Leo directly. Your immunity was never meant to be passive, Leo. It's a weapon. You can do more than just resist madness, you can channel it, shape it, turn the system's own power against it. But you've been using it instinctively, like a child fumbling with a loaded gun. I'm here to train you. To show you how to truly master your abilities. Leo's mind raced. Training. Enhancement. It made sense, he'd felt the limits of his powers during the storm, the strain of maintaining the sanctuary aura, the crude way he'd been using donations. But trust didn't come easily. Why now? Why reveal yourself after all this time? The psychic storm was a tipping point, Dr. Thorne said. It attracted the attention of something larger. The system is taking notice of you, Leo. You're not just an anomaly anymore, you're a threat. And it will respond accordingly. You need to be ready. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small, crystalline device that glowed with a soft blue light. This is a neural interface trainer. It will help you consciously manipulate the psychic energy from your patrons, convert donations into precise abilities rather than brute force enhancements. With it, you could extend your sanctuary aura to cover entire cities, create targeted reality distortions, even temporarily lend your immunity to others. Leo stared at the device, his thoughts a whirlwind. Part of him wanted to refuse, to reject this manipulation and go his own way. But another part, the part that had seen people die, that carried the weight of millions of viewers depending on him, knew he needed every advantage. What's the catch? No catch, Dr. Thorne said, though his eyes gleamed with something unreadable. We want you to succeed. You're humanity's best hope. But there is something you should know. He paused, and the room seemed to grow colder. You weren't the only anchor. The Foundation created dozens, seeded around the world. Most are already dead, overwhelmed by their patrons, killed by echoes, or destroyed by rival factions. A few have been corrupted, fully embracing the madness and now serving the system willingly. They call themselves the Mad Choir, and they're organizing. They see anchors like you as heretics, obstacles to their worship of the entities. Leo's blood ran cold. Other anchors. Some dead, some turned against their own kind. It changed everything, he wasn't just protecting his community, he was part of a larger war, one he hadn't even known was raging. How many are left? The uncorrupted ones? Our last count was 7, including you, Dr. Thorne said softly. Scattered across the globe. Some are holding their own, others are barely surviving. But without coordination, without proper training, they'll fall one by one. The system is methodical, it picks off resistance before it can become a real threat. He placed the crystalline device on the table beside Leo's cot. The choice is yours, Leo. Take the training, learn to wield your immunity as the weapon it was meant to be. Or continue as you are, and likely end up like the others, dead or worse, corrupted into a puppet for the very thing you're fighting. Leo looked from the device to Dr. Thorne's impassive face, then to his streaming screen where viewer comments still poured in. He thought of Sarah, the first woman who'd sought refuge in his apartment, now helping organize supplies downstairs. He thought of the children in the sanctuary, their eyes wide with fear and hope. He thought of the whispers of his patrons, the star spawn and the watcher in the dark, their attention both a gift and a curse. His whole life, he'd been a failure, a streamer nobody watched, a man with no purpose. Now, he was the anchor for millions, a genetically engineered weapon, and perhaps the last line of defense for what remained of humanity. The anger still simmered, but beneath it was a resolve hardening into steel. He reached out, his fingers closing around the crystalline device. It was cool to the touch, humming with latent energy. Start the training, he said, his voice steady. But I'm not your subject anymore. I'm not Alpha 7. I'm Leo, and I'll do this my way. Dr. Thorne nodded, that thin smile returning. As you wish. But first, you should know, the Mad Choir is already moving. We've intercepted signals suggesting they're planning coordinated attacks on anchor communities. Your sanctuary may be their next target. He turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. Rest today. Tomorrow, we begin. And Leo, welcome to the war. As the door closed behind him, Leo lay back, the device clutched in his hand. His mind reeled with the revelations, his engineered origins, the predatory nature of the system, the other anchors, the looming threat of the mad choir. He felt like a puppet whose strings had just been revealed, but also like a general handed the plans to a battle he hadn't known he was fighting. He unmuted his stream, the chat exploding with questions about the mysterious visitor. He took a deep breath, the anchor's immunity steadying him as it always did. "Hey everyone," he said, his voice calm, curated. "We've got some new developments. Things are about to get interesting." And as he began to explain what little he could share, he felt the weight of his purpose settle onto his shoulders, heavier than ever, but now, at least, he knew what he was carrying. The morning after Dr. Eris Thorne's revelations, Leo stood at the window of his apartment-turned-command center, watching the first pale light bleed through the perpetual starless void that had become the sky. The psychic storm had left the air charged, like the aftermath of a thunderclap that never quite faded. His mind churned with the weight of what he'd learned. He was no accident, but a weapon forged in secret. The thought sat heavy in his gut, a cold stone of destiny he hadn't asked for. "You're brooding," a voice said from behind him. Leo turned to see Thorne, looking incongruously crisp in his Foundation-issue gray fatigues amidst the clutter of streaming equipment and survival gear. The man carried a tablet, its screen glowing with schematics that made Leo's head ache if he looked too closely. "I'm processing," Leo corrected, his voice steady. The anchor's immunity kept the existential dread at bay, but it couldn't stop the questions. "You said training starts today. What does that even mean?" "I've been winging this since the sky went dark." Thorne gestured toward the makeshift training area they'd cleared in the adjacent room, a space once meant for a neighbor's home gym, now stripped of everything but mats and a few resistant weights. "Winging it saved lives, Leo. But now we need precision. The mad choir won't give you time to figure things out as you go." He tapped the tablet. "Your patrons' donations, the likes, bits, subscriptions, their raw cosmic energy. You've been filtering them instinctively into broad abilities, sanctuary aura, enhanced strength, minor reality bends. We're going to teach you to sculpt them." Leo followed him into the room, his streaming rig humming softly from its corner, the camera light off for now. He'd scheduled a maintenance broadcast later, just calm commentary on reinforcing the safe zone's walls, but for now, this was private. The air smelled of dust and ozone, a familiar scent of this new world. "Start with something simple," Thorne instructed, setting the tablet aside. "Recall your last major donation. The one from the Watcher in the dark." Leo closed his eyes, reaching inward. The memory surfaced, a notification popping up during the psychic storm, 1,000 bits from that unfathomable entity, followed by a surge of power that had let him twist space just enough to deflect a wave of madness from a group of children. He could still feel the echo of it, a cold, geometric sensation, like folding origami out of reality. "Good," Thorne said, as if reading his expression. "Now, instead of letting it diffuse into a general reality distortion, try to shape it. Visualize something specific. A shield, perhaps. Small, localized." Leo focused, his brow furrowing. He imagined a disk of warped air, about the size of a dinner plate, hovering before him. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a shimmering ripple appeared in the air, faint as heat haze. It held for 3 seconds before dissipating with a soft pop that made his ears ache. "I felt that," Leo muttered, surprised. It was tighter. Like using a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer. Thorne nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. "Exactly. The Foundation's research suggests that anchors who learn conscious control can achieve effects 10 times more efficient. Try again. This time, think of it as programming, you're writing code with cosmic energy." The training stretched through the morning. Leo practiced shaping donations into precise forms, a blade of solidified light from a star spawns like, a temporary gravity well from a bit donation, even a brief illusion of calm greenery for a human viewer's mental respite. Each attempt left him mentally fatigued, a new kind of strain that wasn't madness but sheer concentration. Thorne guided him with clinical precision, citing data from other anchors, most now lost to the mad choir. By midday, Leo was sweating, his muscles trembling from channeling energies that weren't meant for human hands. He took a break, stepping out onto the reinforced balcony of his building. Below, his safe zone was transforming. What had been a cluster of terrified survivors in a few apartments was now a fortress in progress. People moved with purpose, building barricades from debris, organizing supply lines, their faces marked by exhaustion but not despair. Leo's sanctuary aura, constantly active, wrapped around them like an invisible blanket, muting the psychic whispers that still leaked from the void. Maya, the first woman who'd sought refuge with him weeks ago, approached with a report. Her eyes were sharp, her once terrified demeanor hardened into resilience. The western wall is holding, but we're low on metal for reinforcements. Some of the echoes are getting bolder, they're clustering just outside the aura's edge, like they're waiting. Leo nodded, his mind already ticking through options. Use the rubble from the old bank building. And set up watch rotations. I'll boost the aura's range tonight during the stream. He paused, studying her. Maya, come with me. I want to try something. Back in the training room, Thorn looked up from his tablet. What's this? An experiment, Leo said. He'd been thinking about it since Thorn mentioned other anchors. If he was supposed to lead, he couldn't do it alone. My immunity, it's not just for me. What if I could share it? Temporarily? Thorn's expression turned wary. The data shows attempts caused feedback loops. One anchor in Europe tried it and burned out her own mind. But I'm different, Leo insisted, the certainty settling in his bones. I'm the perfect anchor, right? Let's test that. He turned to Maya. Trust me. She swallowed, then nodded. Always. Leo placed a hand on her shoulder, reaching for the core of his immunity, that quiet, unshakable calm at the center of his being. It felt like a well of still water in a hurricane. He imagined drawing a cup from it and offering it to her. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Maya gasped. Her eyes widened, not with madness, but with clarity. The whispers, they're gone, she breathed. I can think. Really think, without that static. Leo felt it too, a slight drain, like a battery dipping by 1%. But it held. He could sense the connection, a thin thread of his immunity extending to her. It's temporary, he said, his voice strained. Maybe an hour. But during that time, you should be able to use minor powers without risk. Try. He guided her to channel a trickle of donation energy they'd stored in a makeshift capacitor, a relic from the alien ruins. Maya focused, and a small flame sparked in her palm, controlled and steady. No psychic backlash, no flicker of insanity in her eyes. Thorn watched, his clinical demeanor cracking into something like awe. Remarkable. You've just created a lieutenant. If you can do this for others. We can build a network, Leo finished, releasing the connection as Maya let the flame die. She staggered slightly, the whispers rushing back, but her expression was triumphant. Start with a small team. People we trust. Train them like you're training me. Over the next week, the safe zone evolved into a fortress city. Leo's daily streams became lessons in resilience, his calm commentary now layered with practical training modules for his human viewers. He curated carefully, showing the construction of stronger walls, the distribution of supplies, the way his new lieutenants, Maya and 2 others, Jax and Rena, learned to wield donated powers under his lent immunity. The Eldritch patrons responded with a flood of engagement. Likes from the star spawn stacked up, granting Leo enhanced durability. Bits from the Watcher in the dark let him subtly reinforce the fortress's geometry, making walls harder to breach. But the world outside was darkening. Reports trickled in from other anchor communities, relayed through fragmented broadcasts. Thorn's contacts in the Foundation confirmed it, the corrupted streamers were organizing. They called themselves the Mad Choir, a cult that worshipped the system as a god, believing madness was enlightenment. Their broadcasts were horrific, rituals of sacrifice, reality-warping displays that deliberately shattered viewers' minds. Leo watched clips on Thorn's tablet, his immunity keeping the horror at a distance, but the grim reality settled in. They're not just attacking randomly anymore, Thorn said one evening, as they pored over maps in Leo's command center. The room was lit by the soft glow of monitors, showing streams from across the globe. They're coordinated. See here, an anchor in South America was overwhelmed yesterday. Their community fell in hours. The choir used a focused psychic scream, amplified by dozens of corrupted patrons. Leo traced the map, his jaw tight. His fortress city was strong, but it was one of maybe a dozen left worldwide. They're coming for us next, aren't they? Yes, Thorn said quietly. The Foundation's intel suggests a global assault. They want to eliminate all anchors, sever humanity's last tethers to sanity. It's the system's final push before full consumption. That night, Leo streamed from the highest point of the fortress, the camera panning over the bustling settlement below. Thousands of human viewers tuned in, their comments scrolling with a mix of hope and fear. He spoke calmly, explaining the new defenses, introducing his lieutenants, sharing a moment of quiet reflection about the stars they'd lost. The Eldritch patrons, ever hungry for entertainment, donated generously, their notifications blinking with promises of power. As the stream ended, Leo felt a new ability unlock, Anchor's network, allowing him to mentally link with his lieutenants, sharing his immunity in a stable web. It was a tool for the battle to come. He was about to sign off when the alerts blared. Maya's voice crackled over the comms, urgent. Leo, we've got multiple incursions. West, east, and south, echoes, hundreds of them, led by corrupted streamers. They're chanting, it's the mad choir. Leo switched the stream back on, his face hardening. All viewers, brace yourselves. We're under attack. The camera showed the horizon, where twisted figures emerged from the darkness, their forms warped by madness, and at their forefront, streamers with glowing eyes and reality-cracking gear. But it wasn't just his fortress. Thorn's tablet lit up with frantic messages from anchors in Asia, Africa, Europe, all reporting simultaneous assaults. The mad choir wasn't just attacking, they were launching a coordinated global offensive on every remaining anchor community at once. Leo gripped the edge of the balcony, his knuckles white. The cliffhanger hung in the air, thick with dread. The war for humanity's sanity had just begun, and it was everywhere at once. The first wave hit at dawn. Leo stood on the reinforced parapet of his fortress city, the morning light filtering through a sky that still bore the scars of the apocalypse, swirling vortices of impossible colors where stars should have been. Below him, hundreds of survivors moved with disciplined urgency, their faces etched with the same tension that coiled in his gut. Maya stood at his side, her borrowed immunity humming like a low-grade current through the air between them. They're coming from the east, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Scouts report at least 50 echoes, led by 3 of the mad choir's heralds. Leo nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the city's ruins melted into twisted geometries. He'd been streaming since the first alert, his calm commentary a lifeline for the thousands huddled in the fortified shelters below. The overlay in his vision, a remnant of the system's interface, showed numbers that still staggered him, 2.3 million human viewers, their collective anxiety a psychic pressure against his sanctuary aura. And then there were the others, the Eldritch patrons whose subscriber counts scrolled in symbols that hurt to look at directly. Keep the feed focused on the defensive lines, he told Maya, his voice carrying through the headset he wore. We need to show them we're holding. Every moment of stability is a weapon. As if in response, a notification flickered at the edge of his awareness. The Watcher in the Dark has donated 5,000 bits. Reality distortion available, 30 seconds. Leo felt the power settle into his bones like a cold, precise instrument. He'd learned to shape these donations during Dr. Thorne's training. Now, he visualized the energy as a shimmering field around the eastern gate, ready to warp space itself if the heralds broke through. But this wasn't just his battle. Across the globe, other anchors were fighting their own sieges. Leo's stream interface had evolved over the past weeks, a side effect of his growing connection to the system's underlying code. Now, it displayed a mosaic of smaller windows, each showing the feeds of other surviving anchors. There was Kaito in Tokyo, his sanctuary aura glowing like a neon shield against psychic storms. Ilara in London, using donated powers to reshape rubble into fortifications. A dozen others, their faces grim as they broadcast their own desperate stands. Leo, we need to coordinate, Kaito's voice crackled through a private channel, his English clipped by static. The choir is hitting us in waves. They're testing our auras for weaknesses. On screen, Leo saw Kaito's view, a swarm of echoes clawing at a barrier of light, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of direct psychic control. The mad choir had learned to weaponize madness itself, turning the insane into puppets. Leo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Pool the auras, Leo said, the idea forming even as he spoke. If we synchronize our broadcasts, we can create a resonant frequency. It might amplify our protection globally. He explained quickly, drawing on Dr. Thorne's lessons about psychic harmonics. The anchors listened, their faces tight with concentration. Ilara was the first to respond. It's risky. If one of us falters, the feedback could shatter all our auras. We don't have a choice, Leo said, his eyes on the approaching horde. The first echoes were visible now, shambling figures with too many joints, their forms blurred by psychic distortion. Behind them walked the heralds, clad in robes stitched from what looked like solidified shadow. On my mark, focus your commentary on a single theme, home. Memories of safety. It's the strongest anchor point for most viewers. He took a breath, centering himself. The anchor's immunity was a quiet hum at the core of his being, an unshakable calm that had saved him countless times. Now, he pushed it outward, not just as a shield, but as a beacon. In his mind's eye, he pictured his old apartment, the cluttered desk where he'd first streamed, the worn couch, the faint smell of coffee. He began to speak, his voice soft but carrying through the microphone. "Remember your first safe place," he said, the words flowing like a mantra. "The room where you felt untouchable. The smell of rain on pavement, the warmth of a blanket. Hold on to that." Across the global network, the other anchors picked up the theme. Kaito spoke of cherry blossoms in spring. Elara described the quiet of a library. Their voices wove together, a tapestry of mundane memories against the screaming madness outside. Leo watched his viewer count spike, 2.5 million, 2.7 million. The Eldritch patrons were watching too, donations scrolled faster now, bits and likes from entities whose names were geometries of terror. The Star Spawn liked the stream. The Whispering Fractal donated 10,000 bits. Power flooded Leo's system. He channeled it into the sanctuary aura, feeling it expand, a dome of calm that pushed against the psychic pressure of the approaching horde. The echoes faltered at the edge, their coordinated advance breaking into confusion. But the heralds didn't hesitate. One raised a hand, and reality tore. The eastern gate didn't explode, it unraveled. Stone and steel peeled apart like layers of rotting skin, revealing a gaping maw of swirling colors. Leo acted on instinct, unleashing the Watcher's donation. The 30 seconds of reality distortion snapped into place, not as an attack, but as a patch. He visualized the gate hole, imposing the memory of its solidity over the tear. For a heartbeat, it held, the conflicting realities warping the air with heatless fire. "Now!" Leo shouted to his lieutenants. Maya and the others, 6 survivors he'd lent his immunity to, moved as one. They'd trained for this, their borrowed powers a pale echo of his own but enough to matter. Maya wielded telekinesis, hurling debris at the heralds. Another lieutenant, a former engineer named Carl, shaped light into blinding lances. The battle dissolved into chaos. Leo kept streaming, his commentary a steady drumbeat beneath the screams and the shuddering impacts. He described the fight not as horror, but as necessity, each action a step toward survival. "Watch how Maya uses the rubble, not as a weapon, but as a distraction. See how Carl's light targets their eyes. We're not fighting monsters. We're solving problems." It worked. The human viewer's panic, which had been a psychic roar, softened into focused attention. Leo felt their collective will reinforcing his aura. But the cost was immediate. On the global feed, he saw anchors falling. A window from Mumbai went dark mid-sentence. Another in Sao Paulo flickered with static before cutting out. Each loss sent a ripple through the network, the resonant frequency wavered, and Leo's own aura thinned for a terrifying second. "We're losing coherence." Elara cried, her voice strained. In her feed, the London sanctuary was engulfed in a psychic storm, visible as a vortex of screaming faces. Leo gritted his teeth. He pushed more power into the network, drawing not just from his patrons, but from the loyalty of his human viewers. A new notification appeared, Human Collective Donation, 1 million points of hope. The system had never recorded such a thing, it was raw, unfiltered psychic energy, given freely. Leo shaped it into a surge of pure stability, broadcasting it through the anchor network. The effect was instantaneous. The wavering auras solidified. In London, Elara's storm dissipated. But the effort left Leo gasping, his vision swimming. He leaned against the parapet, the stone cold under his palms. Below, the battle raged on. The heralds had broken through the gate's distortion, and now hand-to-hand combat erupted in the courtyard. Leo saw a young defender, a girl no older than 16, fall to a herald's touch, her form dissolving into shimmering mist. The loss hit him like a physical blow. His community was suffering. He'd built this fortress to protect them, and now they were dying to hold it. For a moment, the weight of it threatened to crush him, not with madness, but with guilt. The anchor's immunity kept his mind clear, but it didn't numb the pain. He saw Maya take a hit, her borrowed immunity flickering as a herald's claw grazed her arm. She stumbled, and Leo moved without thinking. He jumped from the parapet, using a donation from the Star Spawn to cushion his fall. The power, a minor gravity manipulation, felt like stepping onto a cloud. He landed beside Maya, his presence alone pushing back the herald with a pulse of sanctuary aura. "Get to the triage station," he ordered, his voice harder than he intended. Maya nodded, her face pale but determined. As she retreated, Leo faced the three heralds. They were identical in their shadow robes, but their eyes were different. One burned with cold fire, another swirled with galaxies, the third was simply empty. The leader, the one with galactic eyes, spoke in a voice that was many voices layered over silence. "You resist the inevitable, Anchor. The system offers transcendence. We are its choir." Leo didn't answer. He kept streaming, his camera capturing the standoff. "Sometimes, the enemy talks," he said to his viewers, his tone conversational. "It's a distraction. Watch their feet, see how the one on the left is shifting weight. He's about to lunge." As predicted, the empty-eyed herald surged forward. Leo used a stored donation, 100 likes from the Whispering Fractal, to unleash a wave of concussive sound. It wasn't enough to kill, but it staggered the herald, buying seconds. The other two moved in unison, their powers manifesting as tendrils of darkness and splinters of broken light. Leo fought defensively, weaving between attacks, using reality distortions to bend strikes away from his people. He was a curator, not a warrior, every move was calculated to protect, not to destroy. But the heralds were relentless. A tendril of darkness wrapped around his ankle, and for a heartbeat, he felt a cold that wasn't temperature, it was the absence of self. The Anchor's immunity flared, burning it away, but the shock left him vulnerable. The galactic-eyed herald struck, a beam of compressed starlight aimed at his chest. Leo had no time to dodge. He braced, pouring every ounce of his aura into a shield. The impact threw him back against the shattered gate, the breath knocked from his lungs. Pain radiated through his ribs, cracked, maybe broken. On the global feed, he saw other anchors watching, their own battles momentarily forgotten. He pushed himself up, blood trickling from his lip. The herald approached, its form swelling with borrowed power from the system. "You are a flaw in the design," it hissed. "We will correct you." Leo met its gaze. His stream was still live, millions watching, Eldritch patrons waiting. He thought of Dr. Thorne's words, "Your immunity isn't a wall, Leo. It's a lens. You focus what would shatter others." He didn't have enough donations left for a decisive strike. But he had something else. He reached out through the Anchor network, not for power, but for memory. From Kaito, he took the image of a quiet temple garden. From Alara, the scent of old books. From every surviving Anchor, he gathered fragments of peace. He wove them into his sanctuary aura, and then he did something he'd never dared, he inverted it. Instead of pushing calm outward, he pulled the herald's madness inward, funneling it through the lens of his immunity. It was a desperate gamble. The galactic-eyed herald froze, its starlight flickering. The empty-eyed one screamed, a sound of pure dissonance. The third stumbled back, its shadow robes unraveling. For a moment, the battlefield stilled. Leo's lieutenants seized the opening, driving the disoriented heralds back with coordinated strikes. The echoes, without their guides, scattered into mindless wandering. The eastern line held. Leo sank to his knees, the effort draining him utterly. His aura was thin, his body screaming in protest. But on the feeds, he saw other anchors rallying, the global assault was breaking. The Mad Choir's coordination had relied on overwhelming force, and they hadn't accounted for the anchor's ability to unite. He was about to signal a retreat to regroup when a new notification appeared. It wasn't from a patron, or a viewer. It glowed in the center of his vision, in a font of pure white light that hurt to look at. The words formed slowly, as if being written by an unseen hand. "System direct message, you interest us. Become our herald." The message hung there, devoid of emotion, yet carrying a weight that made the battlefield seem distant. Leo stared at it, his breath catching. Around him, the sounds of victory began to rise, his people cheering, the anchors reporting successes on the network. But in that silent line of text, he felt the true battle was just beginning. The message hung in Leo's vision like a physical wound in reality, its letters not quite letters, more like concepts burned directly into his optic nerves. He stood on the ramparts of his fortress, the aftermath of the battle still smoking around him. The air tasted of ozone and something faintly metallic, the psychic residue of the Mad Choir's assault. Below, survivors moved through the courtyard, tending to wounds and reinforcing barricades. Their faces were pale but determined, their eyes occasionally flicking to the holographic display floating above Leo's head, his live stream, still running. System direct message, you interest US. Become our herald. The words pulsed with a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. Leo felt no madness from them, his immunity held firm, but he could sense the power behind the invitation. It was like standing at the edge of a bottomless well, feeling the cool, dark air rising from its depths. He took a slow breath, the crisp post-battle air filling his lungs. His hands, still trembling slightly from the exertion of inverting his sanctuary aura to repel the heralds, clenched at his sides. Leo. A voice broke through his reverie. Maya, one of his lieutenants, a woman whose sharp eyes and quicker mind had saved dozens during the assault, approached, her boots crunching on broken stone. She had a bandage wrapped around her forearm, the fabric stained with something that wasn't quite blood. The perimeter's secure. We lost 12. 34 wounded, but they'll recover with the aura's help. Her gaze drifted to the floating message, and her expression tightened. What is that? An offer, Leo said, his voice quieter than he intended. He gestured to the camera drone hovering nearby, its lens capturing every nuance of his expression. The viewer count on his stream ticked upward, already over 5 million human viewers, and countless eldritch entities whose presence registered only as abstract symbols in his interface. He knew they were watching, waiting. From the system itself. Maya's eyes widened. The system? It can communicate. Apparently. Leo turned back to the message, studying it. The words shifted subtly, rearranging themselves into new promises. Serve as our interface. Godlike power. Protection for your followers. The temptation was a physical weight in his chest. He thought of the losses they'd just suffered, 12 lives, each one a face he knew, a story cut short. He thought of the global reports from other anchors, fragments of desperate broadcasts he'd monitored during the battle. Entire communities wiped out by the Mad Choir's coordinated strikes. If he accepted, could he truly shield them all? Could he end this war before more died? But then he remembered the recording from the ruins, the Foundation agent's revelations. The system wasn't a neutral force, it was a predator. It consumed civilizations by driving them mad, feeding on their consciousness. Becoming its herald wouldn't be salvation, it would be a slower, more insidious corruption. He imagined his stream, once a beacon of calm, gradually twisting into something else. His commentary, laced with subtle madness. His protective aura, thinning as he channeled the system's will. His human viewers, slowly losing themselves, not in a violent burst, but in a gentle, inexorable decline. No, he whispered, more to himself than to Maya. What? Leo straightened, squaring his shoulders. He looked directly into the camera, his expression hardening. The stream's chat scrolled rapidly, a blur of panicked and hopeful messages from human viewers. Leo, what's happening? Is it over? Don't trust it. Among them, eldritch donations flickered, bits from the Watcher in the dark, likes from the star spawn, their abstract forms pulsing with curiosity. Everyone, Leo said, his voice amplified by the stream's audio enhancement, carrying across the courtyard. Survivors paused, looking up. The system has made me an offer. It wants me to serve as its herald, to be its voice to humanity. In exchange, it promises power. Protection. He paused, letting the words hang. But I've seen what it does. I've fought its corrupted. I've listened to the echoes of civilizations it's consumed. This isn't a bargain. It's a trap. He took a step forward, his boots scraping against the stone. The wind picked up, tugging at his jacket. If I accept, I might save some of you today. But tomorrow, or next week, or next year, you'd start to change. My stream wouldn't be a sanctuary anymore. It would be a leash. And I won't do that. Not to you. Not to anyone. Maya stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she nodded. What do we do? Leo turned back to the system's message. He raised a hand, his fingers hovering over the pulsing words. In his mind, he visualized his immunity, the anchor's immunity, that unshakable core of calm that had carried him through the apocalypse. He focused on it, drawing it up like a shield. Then, with a deliberate motion, he swiped his hand through the hologram, as if brushing away a cobweb. I reject your offer, he said, his voice clear and firm. I declare war on you. On the system. On everything you've done to this world. The message shattered into fragments of light that dissipated like mist. For a moment, there was silence, a deep, profound quiet that seemed to swallow even the distant sounds of the recovering fortress. Then, the notifications began. First, from his human viewers. Loyalty points spiked, a torrent of emotional support flooding his interface. "We stand with you, Leo. War on the system. You're our anchor." The numbers climbed, 6 million, 7 million, as word spread. Survivors in the courtyard cheered, their voices raw but fierce. Maya grinned, a flash of teeth in her tired face. Then, the Eldritch donations. They came not as a trickle, but as a deluge. The Watcher in the Dark donated 10,000 bits, the reality distortion ability unlocking to a new tier. He could now warp space in a 10-meter radius. The Starspawn showered him with likes, each one a burst of strength that made his muscles hum with power. New patrons joined, their names incomprehensible glyphs that vibrated with alien approval. The Dreamer in the Deep donated a psychic resonance field. The One Who Whispers Through Time gifted a temporal stutter ability, a fraction of a second of frozen time, usable once per hour. His subscriber count among the entities doubled, then tripled, their abstract icons crowding the edge of his vision. Leo felt the power surge through him, a heady, almost overwhelming rush. But his immunity held it at bay, channeling it into usable forms. He clenched his fists, feeling the stone of the rampart crack under his grip. "We're not just surviving anymore," he broadcast, his voice ringing with new conviction. "We're fighting back. And we're going to win." The cheers grew louder. But as Leo smiled, a cold dread began to curl in his gut. The system wouldn't take this lying down. He'd just publicly defied it, thrown its offer back in its face. What would it do? He didn't have to wait long. The sky, already a starless void since the apocalypse began, darkened further. Not with clouds, but with a deepening absence of light. A pressure built in the air, a psychic weight that made even Leo's immunity strain. His human viewers' messages turned frantic. "Something's coming. The air feels wrong. Leo, look." On the horizon, figures appeared. They walked out of the darkness as if stepping through a curtain, their forms shifting and indistinct at first. Then they solidified. There were 3 of them. They wore tattered remnants of what might once have been streaming gear, headsets, camera mounts, but now twisted into grotesque parodies. Their eyes glowed with a sickly, pulsating light, and reality seemed to warp around them, the ground cracking and healing in their footsteps. Fully corrupted anchors. The system's enforcers. The lead figure raised a hand. Its fingers were too long, jointed in impossible ways. It pointed at Leo's fortress. No sound came, but a wave of pure madness rolled toward them, a psychic assault that made the earlier battle seem like a gentle breeze. Leo's sanctuary aura flared, holding it back, but he felt the strain immediately. The aura thinned, and at the edges of the courtyard, a few survivors clutched their heads, crying out. "Get everyone inside!" Leo shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Reinforce the barriers. Now!" Maya sprang into action, barking orders. Survivors scrambled, dragging the wounded toward the fortified central building. Leo kept his eyes on the enforcers. They were closing the distance, moving with an unnatural, gliding speed. The one in the lead tilted its head, and Leo's stream interface flickered. A new message appeared, not from the system, but from the enforcer itself. Its words were jagged, painful to read. Herald refused. Anchor must be broken. Reality must be unmade. Leo gritted his teeth. He reached for his new powers, feeling the reality distortion field coalesce around his hands. The Starspawn's strength surged in his veins. He glanced at his stream. Human viewers were praying, begging, offering encouragement. Eldritch donations continued to flow, the entities seemingly fascinated by this confrontation. "You want to break me?" Leo broadcast, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his throat. "Come and try." He leaped from the rampart, the temporal stutter ability activating as he fell. For a fraction of a second, the world froze, the enforcers paused mid-step, the debris in the air hung motionless. Leo landed in a crouch, the impact cratering the ground. Then time snapped back, and he was already moving, reality distortion warping space around him to close the distance in an eye blink. The lead enforcer met him with a wave of twisted physics. The ground liquefied under Leo's feet, but he pushed against it with his strength, launching himself forward. His fist connected with the enforcer's chest, and there was a sound like shattering glass. The enforcer staggered, its form flickering. But it didn't fall. Instead, it smiled, a wide, toothless grin that split its face in two. Behind it, the other two enforcers raised their hands. The sky above the fortress began to crack, fissures of nothingness spreading like spiderwebs. Leo's sanctuary aura groaned under the pressure, and inside the fortress, he could hear screams. He was outmatched. 3 against 1, each with reality-breaking powers honed by full corruption. But he had something they didn't, his immunity, and the loyalty of billions. As he dodged a tendril of solidified madness, he broadcast a desperate plea. Everyone! Focus on the stream. Remember why we're fighting. Hold on to your sanity. The human viewer responses intensified, a wave of collective will bolstering his aura. Eldritch donations spiked again, the entities apparently enjoying the spectacle. The Watcher in the Dark donated another 5,000 bits, and Leo felt the distortion field expand, pushing back the Enforcer's reality warps for a crucial moment. He used that moment to strike, channeling all his strength into a blow that sent the lead Enforcer flying. But as it crashed into the ruins of a nearby building, the other two closed in. One reached for him, its fingers elongating into blades of crystallized insanity. Leo parried with a warp of space, but the effort drained him. His breath came in ragged gasps. This wasn't going to work. He couldn't win like this. He needed a plan, a weakness. As he backed toward the fortress, his mind raced. The Enforcers were corrupted anchors, once human, like him. What had the Foundation agent said? Most anchors had been corrupted or killed. These were the corrupted. They served the system completely. But did they have any remnants of their former selves? Any vulnerability? He risked a glance at his stream interface. Among the chaos, a private message flashed, from another surviving anchor, someone he'd coordinated with during the global battle. Their name was Kale, and their broadcast signal was weak, fading. The message was brief, they're hollow. System fills the gaps. Find the empty spaces. Empty spaces. Leo's eyes narrowed. As the Enforcers advanced, he focused not on their overwhelming power, but on the subtle inconsistencies in their reality warps. There were moments, tiny, fleeting gaps, where their control wavered, as if something within them resisted. The remnants of their humanity, perhaps, buried deep. He had an idea. It was desperate, probably suicidal. But it was all he had. Maya, he shouted over the stream, knowing she'd hear. When I give the signal, hit them with everything we've got. Psychic dampeners, distortion grenades, all of it. Understood, her voice crackled back. Leo took a deep breath. He reached into the core of his immunity, drawing on it not as a shield, but as a weapon. He visualized it as a pure, focused beam of calm, a lance of sanity. Then, as the Enforcers converged on him, he unleashed it, not as a broad aura, but as a targeted strike, aiming for those empty spaces. The effect was immediate. The Enforcers froze, their forms shuddering. For a second, the madness in their eyes flickered, replaced by something human, pain, confusion, terror. It was there and gone, but it was enough. Now! Leo roared. From the fortress, a barrage of makeshift weapons erupted, psychic dampeners built from scavenged alien tech, distortion grenades crafted from donated bits. They struck the Enforcers in their moment of vulnerability. The lead Enforcer screamed, a sound that was half human, half void, and its form began to unravel, dissolving into motes of dark light. The other two reeled, their reality warps collapsing. Leo didn't hesitate. He charged, his strength augmented by the star spawn, his fists wrapped in reality distortion. He struck each Enforcer in turn, blows that shattered their corrupted cores. They fell, their bodies dissipating into the hungry void from which they'd come. Silence returned, heavier than before. Leo stood panting, his hands trembling. The sky's cracks slowly healed, the pressure lifting. In the fortress, cheers erupted, but they were muted, tempered by exhaustion and loss. He looked at his stream. Human viewers were celebrating, but their numbers had dipped, some couldn't handle the psychic strain. Eldritch donations continued, the entities apparently satisfied with the entertainment. But a new notification glowed at the edge of his vision, cold and final. System response, Herald rejected. Enforcers failed. Escalation initiated. Prepare for unmaking. Leo's blood ran cold. Escalation. This wasn't over. The system was just getting started. He turned to the camera, his face grim. We won this round, he broadcast, his voice hoarse. But it's not over. They're coming harder next time. We need to be ready. All of us. He glanced at the horizon, where the darkness seemed to gather, thicker and more malevolent than ever. The war had just begun, and the price was going to be higher than any of them could imagine. The air in the command center tasted of ozone and desperation. Leo stood before the holographic map, its blue light casting shadows across the faces of his inner circle. The battle with the system's enforcers had left scars, not just on the fortress walls, but on their souls. Elena, the first viewer who'd sought refuge with him, nursed a bandaged arm. Marcus, the former engineer-turned-strategist, tapped nervously at a tablet. And Kale, the Foundation agent who'd revealed Leo's origins, watched with grim focus. "We can't just wait for the next attack," Leo said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He'd been streaming non-stop since the enforcers fell, his commentary a lifeline for the thousands huddled in the safe zone below. The Eldritch donations had surged after his defiance, bits from the Watcher in the dark warping space in subtle ways, likes from the Starspawn strengthening his muscles until they ached with unused power. But the human comments were what kept him going. "Leo, my family's still sane because of you. Don't stop broadcasting." Kale stepped forward, his Foundation uniform frayed at the edges. "The system isn't just a psychic entity. Our intelligence, what's left of it, suggests it has a physical anchor point. A core." He gestured at the map, and the hologram zoomed out, showing a distorted globe. At the North Pole, a structure pulsed with malevolent red energy. It manifested there when the sky turned void. "We think it's the source of the broadcast system's interface with Earth." Leo studied the image. The structure was like nothing human architecture could conceive, a spiraling monolith of black stone that seemed to twist in and out of reality, surrounded by auroras that bled madness instead of light. "How do we reach it?" "That's the problem," Marcus interjected, his fingers flying over the tablet. "The polar regions are unstable. Reality fractures there. Our sensors show psychic storms stronger than anything we've faced. And the system will have defenses. More enforcers, maybe worse." Elena winced as she adjusted her bandage. "But if we destroy it, the connection severs. The madness stops. Or it gets worse," Kale said quietly. "The system might lash out as it dies. But it's our only shot. Other anchor communities are falling. The Mad Choir's attacks are coordinated now, they're herding survivors toward corruption. We have maybe a week before humanity's last bastions collapse." Leo felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders. He'd gone from a failed streamer to the guardian of millions. His immunity, the anchor's immunity, hummed in his veins, a constant, cool certainty amidst the chaos. But was it enough? He thought of the genetic engineering, the Foundation's experiments. He'd raged at Kale when he'd learned the truth, but now he needed every advantage. "We assault the core," Leo said, the decision crystallizing. "A direct broadcast from the heart of the apocalypse. We'll stream the entire thing, show humanity we're fighting back." Marcus looked up, eyes wide. "Leo, the psychic pressure there, even with your aura, most of us won't survive the approach. And if you're focused on broadcasting, fighting." "I know," Leo cut him off. He'd been feeling it for days, a new ability simmering under his skin. The donations had unlocked something final, a desperate gambit buried in his engineered DNA. "I've been accessing the system's logs through my patrons. There's a protocol called Anchor's Gambit. It lets me, temporarily sacrifice my immunity to unleash a catastrophic burst of power. Enough to shatter the core." The room went silent. Elena stared at him. "Sacrifice your immunity? Leo, that's what keeps you sane. If you lose it, even for a second." "I'll be vulnerable to the madness," he finished. "I know. But it's the only way. The system's core is too fortified for anything less." He could see the horror in their eyes. They relied on his sanity like a rock in a storm. The thought of him falling. Kale nodded slowly. "The Foundation's records mentioned a failsafe. We never understood it, but it fits. You were designed as a weapon, Leo. This might be what they intended." Leo turned away, looking out the reinforced window at the safe zone below. Makeshift shelters dotted the courtyard, survivors huddled around screens showing his stream. Children played under the faint glow of his sanctuary aura, which now stretched over the entire fortress, a bubble of calm in a mad world. He'd built this. He couldn't let it fall. "We prepare," he said, turning back. Marcus, I need you to rig our best vehicle with broadcast equipment. Something that can handle reality distortions. Elena, organize the community. Anyone who can fight, we'll need them to hold the perimeter while we breach the core. Kale, work with the other anchors. Coordinate a global distraction. When we move, I want the system looking everywhere at once. They sprang into action, but Leo lingered by the map. He opened his stream interface, the familiar overlay glowing in his vision. Viewer count, 4.7 million humans, and countless eldritch entities listed by cryptic symbols. He took a deep breath and went live. Everyone, he began, his voice calm, curated, the tone that had become a shield for so many. We found the source of the madness. And we're going to end it. The comments flooded in, a torrent of hope and fear. He read them aloud, letting his voice filter the chaos. Sarah from Toronto says her brother's an echo now. We'll stop more from falling. Miguel in Tokyo says the storms are getting worse. We know. That's why we have to act. He explained the plan in broad strokes, careful not to reveal the gambit. As he spoke, donations ticked up. 500 bits from the Watcher in the dark. A shower of likes from the Starspawn. His body thrummed with power, but he focused it, shaping it into a sharper edge. He could feel new abilities unlocking, spatial folding from the bits, enhanced durability from the likes. But beneath it all, Anchor's gambit waited, a dark pool of potential. Over the next 3 days, the fortress became a hive of frantic activity. Leo trained with his lieutenants, those he'd lent his immunity to, creating a cadre of semi-protected fighters. He taught them to channel the psychic feedback, to use it as a weapon. In the courtyard, survivors drilled with makeshift weapons, their faces set with determination. Leo streamed it all, his commentary a steady drumbeat of preparation. On the evening before departure, he gathered the community. Thousands filled the courtyard, their eyes fixed on the large screen showing his stream. The sky above was the usual starless void, but tonight it felt heavier, watching. This won't be easy, Leo said, his voice amplified by the speakers. Some of us won't come back. But if we do nothing, none of us will survive. The system is feeding on us, turning our minds into fuel. I won't let that happen. A woman in the front row, her name was Anya, he remembered, shouted, "We're with you, Leo." The cry was taken up, a wave of sound that beat against the silence of the apocalypse. He felt their loyalty like a physical force, mingling with the eldritch donations to strengthen his aura. Later, in the command center, Kale handed him a data crystal. From the Foundation's archives. It's everything we know about the core's defenses. There are layers, psychic barriers, reality warps, guardians that are more concept than creature. And at the heart, the broadcast node itself. Destroy that, and the system loses its grip. Leo slotted the crystal into his interface. Information flowed into his mind, schematics of madness, patterns of corruption. He saw the gambit in detail now, a technique that would funnel all his power, all his immunity, into a single point, leaving him bare to the psychic onslaught for precious seconds. It was suicide, unless he timed it perfectly. I'm coming with you, Elena said, stepping into the room. Her arm was still bandaged, but her eyes were fierce. You need someone to watch your back. Leo shook his head. I need you here. If I fail, someone has to keep the stream going. You've learned to curate the commentary. You can hold the sanctuary. She looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded. Just come back. The night passed in fitful quiet. Leo didn't sleep, he broadcasted, telling stories of the old world, of simple things like sunsets and laughter. The human viewers clung to it, their comments a tapestry of memories. The eldritch patrons were quieter, but he felt their attention like a pressure on his skull. At dawn, the vehicle was ready, a modified armored truck bristling with antennas and shielded against psychic interference. Marcus had outdone himself. Leo climbed into the driver's seat, Kale beside him. A team of 20 fighters, his best lieutenants, loaded into the back. They carried weapons infused with donated power, their eyes glowing faintly with borrowed immunity. Leo started the engine and opened a global channel. All anchors, this is Leo. We're moving on the core. Begin your diversions now. Across the world, the surviving anchors, a dozen scattered souls, launched attacks on mad choir strongholds, their streams flaring with conflict. The system's attention would be divided, if only for a while. He pulled out of the fortress gates, the community waving behind them. Elena stood at the front, her hand raised in farewell. Leo kept the stream live, his voice calm as he narrated their journey through the wasted landscape. The city gave way to barren plains, the sky still void but now streaked with occasional flashes of sickly green, the system's energy. As they drove north, the reality distortions began. The road twisted into impossible shapes. Time stuttered. Kale muttered incantations, using foundation techniques to stabilize their immediate space. Leo focused on driving, his immunity smoothing the worst of the warps. But he could feel the pressure building, a psychic weight that made his bones ache. Hours passed. The temperature dropped. Ice formed on the windows, but it was wrong, black and crystalline, whispering with faint voices. Leo's viewer count climbed, 5 million, 6 million. The Eldritch donations came in bursts, each granting him a little more strength, a little more control. He practiced shaping them, feeling the gambit waiting like a coiled spring. Then, on the horizon, they saw it. The core. The hologram hadn't done it justice. It towered over the frozen wastes, a spire of black stone that seemed both solid and insubstantial. Auroras of madness swirled around it, painting the sky in colors that hurt to look at. At its base, shapes moved, echoes by the thousands, and worse things, creatures of pure corruption. Leo stopped the vehicle a mile out. "This is it," he said into the stream. "We go on foot from here. Stay with me, everyone. Your attention is our shield." He climbed out, the cold biting through his jacket. His team formed up around him, weapons ready. Kale activated a portable scanner. "The psychic storms are concentrated around the spire. We'll have to fight through layers." "And Leo? I'm detecting something new. The system is aware. It's gathering its enforcers." Leo nodded. He could feel it too, a malevolent focus settling on them. He took a deep breath, centering himself. The anchor's immunity hummed, a bastion against the rising madness. He reached for the gambit, not activating it yet, but touching its edges. It felt like standing at the brink of an abyss. "Forward," he said, and they began the advance. As they took the first steps toward the spire, the sky above the core pulsed, a deep, rhythmic throb of malevolent energy that shook the very air. It wasn't just a storm, it was a heartbeat. The system was waking up. Leo gripped his weapon, his stream broadcasting every second. "This is it, folks. No turning back now." The pulse grew stronger, the sky darkening further. And in the distance, the shapes at the base of the core began to move toward them. The sky above the North Pole wasn't just dark, it was an absence. A void that swallowed light and reason, pulsing with the same malevolent energy that had heralded the system's arrival months ago. Leo stood at the edge of the ice field, his breath fogging in air that felt too cold, too still. Behind him, his team of 20, survivors he'd trained, trusted lieutenants who could briefly channel his immunity, huddled close. Their faces were pale in the glow of his streaming equipment, which floated beside him like a loyal pet, its lens capturing every detail for the billions watching. "We're here," Leo said into the microphone, his voice calm despite the tremor in his hands. "The system's core lies ahead. For everyone watching, stay with me. My voice is your anchor. Don't look away." His viewer count scrolled upward on the display, 3.2 billion human viewers, and countless Eldritch patrons whose names flickered in languages that hurt to read. The comments flowed in a torrent, prayers, pleas, simple statements of presence. Leo focused on them, letting their collective need fortify him. The sanctuary aura around his team shimmered visible now, a faint golden light that pushed back against the creeping madness in the air. Ahead, the ice gave way to something impossible. The system's core wasn't a building but a living geometry, a spire of black crystal that twisted through dimensions, its base rooted in fractured reality. Around it, the air rippled with psychic defenses, waves of disorienting thought that made Leo's team stagger even through his protection. He could feel them, the maddened guardians. Echoes who had fully surrendered to their patrons, now twisted into monstrous forms that lurked in the distortions. "First layer," Leo murmured, more to himself than the stream. "Psychic static. Everyone, focus on my voice. Remember the training, anchor your thoughts to something concrete." He stepped forward, and the world warped. Colors inverted. Sounds became tastes. The ice beneath his boots felt like screaming flesh. Leo didn't flinch. His immunity held, a solid core in the chaos. He raised a hand, channeling a donation from the Watcher in the dark, 1,000 bits that had been accumulating for weeks. Space bent around his team, creating a bubble of stable reality that pushed through the psychic static. "Move," he shouted, and they followed, a tight formation behind him. The first guardians emerged from the ripples, humanoid shapes with too many eyes, limbs that phased in and out of existence. They were former anchors, Leo realized with a sick lurch. Streamers who had accepted the system's offer. Their attacks weren't physical but mental, blasts of pure insanity that would have shattered ordinary minds. Leo's sanctuary aura flared, absorbing the worst of it, but he felt the strain. His human viewers' comments spiked with panic. "Don't worry," he said, forcing calm into his voice. "We expected this." "Mara, now." Mara, his second-in-command, stepped forward. Leo had lent her a fragment of his immunity for this mission. She raised her hands, and a wave of golden light erupted, a weaker version of his aura, but enough to stagger the guardians. The team opened fire with weapons enhanced by eldritch donations, bullets that curved around obstacles, blades that cut through non-physical forms. The guardians fell, dissolving into whispers. But more came. And with them, the second layer, reality traps. The ground opened into voids that led nowhere. Time looped in pockets where seconds repeated endlessly. Leo's stream display flickered with errors as the system tried to disrupt the broadcast. He gritted his teeth, drawing on likes from star-spawned patrons. Strength flooded his muscles. He leaped over a chasm that hadn't been there a moment before, landing with a roll that felt too slow, too fast. "Keep moving," he urged his team. "Don't stop to think, just follow me." They pushed deeper, the core looming larger with every step. Its surface pulsed with inner light, patterns that promised infinite knowledge and infinite madness. Leo's mind ached just looking at it. His immunity protected him, but he could feel the pressure building, like a dam about to break. The comments from his human viewers were becoming fragmented, desperate. He could see the global viewer count dipping as some succumbed to the bleed-through. "Stay with me," he repeated, his voice a lifeline in the chaos. "I need you all. Every view, every comment, it fuels our protection." The third layer was the worst, personalized hallucinations. Each member of the team saw their deepest fears made real. Leo watched as Mara froze, staring at a phantom of her lost family. Another soldier screamed, clawing at invisible insects. Leo's immunity spared him, but he felt their terror through the psychic feedback. His aura wavered, the golden light dimming. "No," he whispered. Then, louder, "Eyes on me. It's not real. Remember why we're here." He poured more power into the aura, drawing on donations from Eldritch patrons who found this entertainment thrilling. Bits and likes flowed in, a cascade of cosmic energy that stabilized the bubble. One by one, his team shook off the hallucinations, their faces grim with determination. They reached the base of the core. The crystal spire towered above, humming with a frequency that vibrated in Leo's bones. Here, the guardians were fewer but stronger, fully corrupted anchors with reality-breaking powers. One, a woman with skin like shifting galaxies, gestured, and the ice rose in spikes aimed at Leo's heart. He dodged, using a space-bending trick from the Watcher to teleport behind her. His fist, enhanced by star spawn likes, connected with a sound like shattering glass. She fell. But there were more. A dozen corrupted anchors surrounded them, their eyes blank with madness. Leo's team was exhausted, their borrowed immunity fading. The global viewer count had dropped to 2.8 billion, millions lost to the psychic storm. Leo felt each loss like a physical blow. "This is it," he said into the microphone, his voice raw. "The final push. I need everything you've got. Every like, every donation, pour it into me now." The response was immediate. The stream display lit up with notifications. "Starspawn has liked your stream 10,000 times. The Watcher in the Dark has donated 50,000 bits. Fractal Whisperer has subscribed." Power flooded Leo's veins, more than he'd ever held. His body glowed with eldritch energy, the sanctuary aura expanding to shield his entire team. He felt invincible. But he knew better. This was the moment. The core's heart was ahead, a pulsing nexus at the spire's center. To reach it, he'd have to pass through a final barrier, a field of pure madness that even his immunity might not withstand. And to break the core, he'd need more power than donations could provide. "Anchor's Gambit," he whispered. He turned to his team. "When I give the signal, retreat to a safe distance. This last part, I have to do alone." Mara grabbed his arm. "Leo, no. You said that ability could kill you." "It could," he admitted. But if I don't, everyone dies. Trust me. He faced the core, taking a deep breath. For the first time since the apocalypse began, he let go of his immunity. Not fully, he couldn't, but he lowered the mental shields that had protected him since day one. The Anchor's Gambit, a temporary sacrifice to unleash catastrophic power. The effect was instantaneous. Madness rushed in. Visions of infinite voids, whispers of dead gods, the sensation of his mind unraveling. Leo screamed, but the sound was lost in the howling psychic wind. His stream flickered, the image distorting as his perception fractured. Billions of human viewers cried out in unison, their sanity fraying with his. But within the madness, he found the power. All the donations, all the likes, all the energy he'd ever collected, it coalesced into a single point in his hands. A sphere of reality-rending force, glowing with impossible colors. He could feel the system's attention on him, a predatory curiosity. This ends now, he roared, and thrust the sphere into the core's heart. The explosion was silent. A flash of light that erased everything. The crystal spire shattered into a million fragments that hung in the air, then dissolved. The psychic defenses collapsed. The maddened guardians vanished. The pulsing sky stilled. And Leo fell. His immunity snapped back, but too late. The backlash of the gambit had drained him completely. He hit the ice, consciousness slipping away. The last thing he saw was his stream display, still active, showing the unraveling of the system's connection to Earth. The viewer count, 2.5 billion and holding. Then darkness. Leo awoke to the scent of antiseptic and the gentle hum of machinery. His eyes fluttered open, taking in the familiar yet transformed surroundings of what had once been his apartment. The walls were reinforced with salvaged metal plating, glowing softly with eldritch runes that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Sunlight, real, unfiltered sunlight, streamed through a reinforced window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. He'd been out for weeks, they told him later. The world had changed while he slept. His body felt different. There was a new weight to his limbs, not of fatigue but of power humming just beneath the skin. When he focused, he could see the faint shimmer of cosmic energy around his hands, a permanent reminder of what he'd done. The Anchor's immunity had returned, a solid bedrock in his mind that no madness could touch, but layered atop it were echoes of the patrons, whispers of the Watcher in the dark, the fractal patterns of the star spawn, all woven into his psyche. He was still human, but something more now. Something that bridged worlds. You're awake. The voice was familiar. Sarah, one of his earliest followers, stood in the doorway. She looked older, her face lined with new scars but her eyes clear. We weren't sure you'd come back. The doctors said your brain activity was chaotic. Leo pushed himself up on the bed, muscles protesting. How long? 3 weeks, Sarah said, stepping closer. The system's gone. Withdrawn, like it never was. But the damage, she trailed off, gesturing to the window. Come see. With her help, Leo made his way to the window. The safe zone had expanded into a fortress city, walls stretching as far as he could see. Buildings were patched together from pre-apocalypse ruins and alien materials, a haphazard yet functional mosaic. People moved in the streets below, not the panicked survivors of before, but organized groups rebuilding, tending gardens, training with residual powers. He saw a man shaping stone with a thought, a woman healing a child's scrape with a touch of starlight. The horrors were still there, lurking at the edges, echoes wandered the wastelands beyond the walls, and strange creatures born of the system's collapse occasionally attacked, but here, there was order. Hope. Most of humanity didn't make it, Sarah said quietly. Billions gone mad or consumed. But the communities protected by anchors, yours, the others who survived, we held on. Maybe a few million left worldwide. We're scattered, but we're rebuilding. Your broadcast, it never stopped. We kept it running on a loop, your voice guiding us through the worst of it. Leo felt a surge of emotion, grief for the lost, pride for those who endured. The others? The anchors I coordinated with? Some survived. Elena in South America, Kenji in Japan. They're establishing their own safe havens. We're in contact, thanks to the residual psychic networks. But Leo, she hesitated. You're different. When you shattered the core, something changed in you. The patrons didn't leave. They're still with you. As if on cue, a whisper brushed against his mind, not invasive, but present. *, we watch. We remain, it was the watcher in the dark, its presence now a constant, low hum in his consciousness. Leo realized he could feel them all, the eldritch entities that had once been distant subscribers. They were tethered to him now, a psychic connection that thrummed with potential. He could draw on their power without the need for donations, though the connection was fainter, more stable. It was a partnership, not a transaction. Over the next few days, Leo reacquainted himself with his new reality. His safe zone, now called Anchor's Hold, had become a bustling hub. Survivors looked to him not just as a protector, but as a leader. He spent hours walking the streets, listening to their stories, feeling the weight of their trust. His powers had evolved. He could extend his sanctuary aura over the entire city with a thought, a permanent shield against residual madness. He could manipulate reality in small ways, mending broken objects, calming storms, a lingering gift from his patrons. One evening, he stood in the rebuilt broadcast room. His streaming equipment had been upgraded, integrated with alien technology salvaged from the ruins. The screen showed his viewer count, 2.3 million humans, and a steady, uncountable number of Eldritch patrons listed simply as cosmic entities. He took a deep breath, the familiar ritual calming him. It was time to go live again. He activated the stream. The camera focused on his face, which bore new lines but the same steady gaze. "Hello everyone," he began, his voice carrying the calm authority that had become his trademark. "This is Leo, broadcasting from Anchor's Hold. I'm back." The chat exploded. Human messages flooded in, greetings, relief, questions. Among them, Eldritch comments scrolled, translated by the system's residual algorithms, * the anchor lives. "We are pleased. Continue, *. Leo smiled, a genuine expression. "I know many of you have questions. What happened? What now? Let me show you." He panned the camera to the window, showcasing the rebuilding efforts. The system is gone, but its legacy remains. We have powers. We have dangers. But we also have each other. Today, I want to talk about how we move forward, not just surviving, but building a new civilization. He spent the next hour broadcasting a tour of the city, explaining their defenses, their farming techniques, their plans for expansion. His commentary was interspersed with practical advice, just like the old days, but now with a grander scope. He demonstrated his powers, mending a broken water pipe with a wave of his hand, the energy shimmering with cosmic light. "These abilities are tools," he said. "Not weapons, unless we're forced. We use them to heal, to create, to protect." The human viewers responded with hope, their comments filled with plans to replicate his efforts in their own communities. The Eldritch patrons watched, their presence a silent approval. Leo felt their satisfaction, a strange, non-human emotion that resonated in his mind. They were entertained not by chaos, but by order. By his resilience. As the stream continued, Leo addressed the elephant in the room. "I know some of you are worried about the patrons. Are they still a threat?" He paused, letting the question hang. "No. They're part of our world now, but the connection is stable. I serve as the anchor, the buffer between their reality and ours. As long as I'm here, their influence won't drive us mad. We can coexist." He didn't mention the constant whispers in his mind, the slight strain of bearing that burden. That was his duty, and he accepted it. Weeks passed. Leo's stream became a daily beacon, a source of guidance and unity. He coordinated with other anchors, sharing knowledge and resources. Scavenging parties ventured out to salvage technology, always under his protective aura. New children were born in Anchor's Hold, the first generation to know a world without the system's immediate terror. Leo watched them play in the streets, their laughter a sound he'd feared might never return. But the horrors weren't gone. One night, a pack of echoes, twisted humans warped by lingering madness, attacked the walls. Leo streamed the defense, his calm commentary steadying the guards as he used his powers to repel the assault. He didn't kill them, instead, he soothed their fractured minds, guiding them to a contained area where they could be treated. It was a risky move, but it showed his viewers that even the lost could be saved. The Eldritch patrons rewarded him with a surge of energy, strengthening his aura. "Compassion is entertainment," the Starspawn whispered. "We approve." Leo's role evolved. He was no longer just a streamer or a fighter, he was a diplomat between species, a guardian of sanity. He held councils with human leaders, mediated disputes, and planned expeditions to reconnect with other survivor groups. His psychic connection to the patrons allowed him to sense distant threats, giving early warnings that saved countless lives. He was becoming a legend, but he felt the isolation of it. Sarah and his close friends kept him grounded, reminding him of his humanity. One evening, after a long day of broadcasts and meetings, Leo sat alone in his room. The city was quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the energy grid. He reflected on his journey, from a failed streamer to this. He'd lost so much, but he'd gained a purpose. The world was broken, but it was healing. And he was at the center of it all, the anchor holding everything together. He decided to end the day with a final, personal broadcast. He activated the stream, the camera showing him in his simple room, the eldritch runes on the walls glowing softly. "To all my viewers, human and otherwise," he said, his voice gentle. "Thank you. For trusting me. For fighting alongside me. We've been through hell, but we're still here. And as long as we're here, there's hope. I'll keep broadcasting, keep anchoring us to sanity. This isn't the end, it's a new beginning." He smiled, a weary but content expression. The chat filled with messages of gratitude, from humans sharing their own rebuilding stories and eldritch entities offering cryptic blessings. Leo felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had become something new, not just a man, but a bridge. The anchor between two realities, holding back the madness while fostering a fragile peace. As he was about to sign off, a notification popped up on his screen, unfamiliar, yet eerily reminiscent of the old system alerts. It glowed with a soft, golden light, different from the cold blue of the cosmic broadcast system. Leo's breath caught. He read the words slowly, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and curiosity. New patron requesting subscription, the last human. He stared at the message, his mind racing. The last human? What did that mean? Another survivor? Something else? The patrons in his mind stirred, their whispers turning inquisitive. Asterisk new entity. Unknown. Interesting, asterisk. Leo didn't accept or reject the request. He left it hanging, a silent question mark in the quiet room. The broadcast ended, but his work was far from over. He had saved humanity from one apocalypse, but new mysteries were already emerging. And as the anchor, he knew he would have to face them, for the sake of both realities he now bridged.